incredibly tiny exponential ratio, 1 in 10, a hyper-exponential, 1 in 10 to the 10 to the 123. You can't even get your mind around a number like that. So at every level, the universe, in the setup job at the beginning, in the fine-tuning of the constants, the strength of the fundamental forces, and then finally in the structure of our solar system as well. As I mentioned, we're just the right distance from just the right kind of sun with just the right axial tilt, with a Jupiter, big gas giant, sweeping the outer parts of the solar system, protecting us from asteroids. It's just exquisite, all the factors that are just right to allow for first complex chemistry, and then a life-friendly planet like Earth. So if you start thinking about all that, you take it a little less for granted.
That's so true. You know, when you speak like this, it brings tears to my eyes because when you study the science and you think about how marvelous it is, you look at this and you say, this is just amazing, the way these pieces have come together. So for example, in a cell, all of these different interactions are going, and all of these different pieces. I want to do a thought experiment so maybe the audience can realize, you know, Steve and I sometimes we'll call each other for some short little thing, and we'll end up spending over an hour on the phone speaking together about whatever topic is latest to speak about in science. So Steve, think about this thought experiment. People always want to take the basic chemicals and make them. So you've got to have the nucleic acids, the amino acids, the lipids, and the saccharides. They always try to make these. They're abysmal at trying to make these under any prebiotic conditions. And generally, when they're made, they're racemic. They're not optically pure. And if there is some chirality, the optical purity is very low. But then stringing them together is another problem. But say you had all these pieces, and how do you assemble them into a cell? We have no idea how to assemble them into a cell. How to take this DNA and wrap it around a histone to just get the enzymes just going just right to do that. We're clueless on these sorts of things. But let's, in this thought experiment, say we already have a functioning, working cell. So everything is in place. But now the cell just dies. Just died a nanosecond ago. It just died. What did we just lose? And what would we have to do to get it going again? Because everything is approximately in place. Have we any idea how to get this cell going again?
Well, it's the Humpty Dumpty problem, right? You've got all of these pieces, but all those pieces does not a living organism make. And there's a more technical name for this problem in origin of life studies, as you know, the Leventhal paradox. You know, you've got even if you start with all the proteins, it turns out, the number of different ways of arranging all those proteins that have nothing to do with life vastly outstrips. Is a huge exponential number. It's 10 to the 66 million or something. I have to look it up. I was just writing about it, but it's
10 to the 79, exactly. 10 to the 79 billion. 10 to the 79 billion in a single cell.
Right. Yeah. The 10 to the 66 million is the number of different models, inflationary cosmological models that do not result in a life-friendly universe. So that's another one of these, you know, fine-tuning parameters. I got the two huge exponential numbers mixed up, but yeah, that Leventhal thing. So you've got all these different pieces. You have all the right pieces. Origin of life scientists are straining to get amino acids under realistic prebiotic conditions, and have you shown so beautifully they can't do it without all kinds of investigator interference. They have to use very precise recipes and introduce the right reagents at the right time and remove the byproducts that they don't want so they don't get interfering cross reactions. And all they're getting in the end of the day is amino acids, which are just components of proteins that have to be arranged in very precise order. Well, the Leventhal paradox is, well, I'll give you all the proteins. And even with all the proteins, there's so many different possible ways of arranging them that don't result in an integrated living cell, that you're faced with these enormous search problems that that are vastly beyond what we call the probabilistic resources of the universe. So the undirected chance plus necessity approach to the origin of life, I think, seems really hopeless. I think it's a non-starter. Intellectually, if you're really honest about what it takes to build a living organism, even the very simplest living organism.
Yes, I agree. Now, since you're
And we can define the necessary conditions of life, but we've all, I think, had the sense that there's something about life that's greater than the sum of its parts. And you don't have to be a cell biologist to know this. If you've ever lost a person that you love and you're with them at that moment of death, all the parts are still there, but the person is no longer there. What is that that's left? In the biblical view, it's a spirit, a soul, a mind, and a spirit. It's something immaterial. And now, I don't know when we're talking about a living cell as opposed to a human being. The human being, I'm sure there's a spirit and a mind, but there's something mysterious about life that we haven't really come to grips with. We know what's necessary from the standpoint of the physical substrates, what has to be in place to make life possible. But when life leaves, we don't exactly know what it is that's left, but we know something is left, and it's not just the physical.
Yeah, if I could just try to reduce this to something utterly amazing that maybe our audience, those watching, would want to think about. We are so clueless on this thing. If a cell just dies, it's hard for us to define what it is we just lost. Just try to describe what life was. What is it? Is it just this potential across a bilayer? No, it's many, many, many things together, and we're not sure even how to define that thing, let alone make it from the bottom up. We are utterly clueless. And what happens is people think that scientists have already figured this thing out. And so they just kind of accept it. Well, scientists know how to do that. They don't. They're clueless. Share something on this, Steve.
And even more so when it comes to the origin of life. It's hard enough to define what it is, but as you've shown, trying to explain how it got here from a prebiotic soup or whatever the theories. I mean, you and I both have a deep interest in this question. I did my PhD on it, and my first book, as you kindly shared with your audience, was about that. And you've been writing these fantastic articles for Inference and other places, holding these guys to account, because our students are told that we do have this all figured out, that chemistry in a warm little pond or in a prebiotic soup would have, with the right spark or lightning or something, would have reacted and naturally and gotten more and more and more complex. And we found that you actually, in the laboratory, you can't move you can't move the chemicals in a life-friendly direction without repeated interventions of intelligent investigators. And to my way of thinking, these simulation experiments in origin of life research or origin of life studies, they have a particular logic about them. They're based on uniformitarian reasoning. The present is the key to the past. What we see happening in the laboratory is our guide to understanding what is plausible to think might have happened in the past. So when these investigators, time and time again, can't form even proteinaceous amino acids without, in a sense, cooking the book, setting up the experiment in just the right way, introducing just the right reagents at just the right time, removing the stuff so they don't get the interfering cross reactions, et cetera, what are they actually simulating? It seems to me they're simulating the need for a mind to move the chemicals in a life-friendly direction. And at the same time, we still don't have a definition of what life is. We know it when we see it. We know when it's gone, but we know it's necessary. We know we need energy. We need to hold a complex system far from thermodynamic equilibrium. We need information. We need metabolic pathways. We need various things to make life, but those necessary conditions that all have to be in a precise configuration with each other in order for there to be life as a whole. And yet we don't really have a complete definition, but the origin of life is utterly mystifying from a materialistic point of view. And every attempt to simulate it seems to suggest the need for a designing intelligence to superintend over the process.
Yeah, it's interesting to sit with you because you and I have attended meetings together for the last several years, and we hear different people come up with their different little proposals. And as soon as you ask for details, it goes into storytelling, and it's just how utterly clueless we are. Let me begin to turn this in another direction, because you had mentioned something about this non-equilibrium. One of your colleagues, Brian Miller, Dr. Brian Miller, so he writes about this not from the perspective that I do. I look at this from a synthetic organic chemist. He's writing about this as a physical chemist, and he writes this, and I want you to unpack this. So listen to this carefully, what he writes. Right. Many people say that the simplest of life is a bacterium. So he says bacteria of all levels of complexity must generate in their cell membranes, at least 100,000 ATP molecules per second per micron squared to simply maintain their integrity against the constant thermodynamic forces disrupting their homeostatic stability. A drop in power results in the metabolism halting and the cell irreversibly decomposing into an amorphous conglomeration of simpler chemicals. So explain to us what this means, that life is a non-equilibrium system, and how nature tries to move things toward an equilibrium, and what all this means.
Right. Let me put this discussion in a little broader context. There's been a kind of a back and forth. The old line creationists used to say that the life couldn't have evolved because it violates the second law of thermodynamics. Because living systems are highly ordered, things tend to go from disorder to order, from low to high entropy being more disorder, low entropy being more order. The standard evolutionary response was, well, that's true as far as it goes, but it's overly simplistic. If you push energy through a system, you can maintain a higher level of order because of the energy moving through the system in a localized environment. You can have, overall, you'll still have more disorder, but in a localized environment, you can maintain a high degree of order, providing you're pushing energy through a system. And since our sun is pumping energy into Earth all the time, we can have high order in our localized environment, even though in the solar system as a whole, we're moving towards disorder. And that's true as far as it goes. We have lots of examples of that. A tornado will create, the energy that produces the tornado creates a localized increase in order with a swirling vortex. But the problem is with these non-equilibrium systems, that what the kind of order that's produced has nothing to do with the kind of order we see in biology. It's a highly symmetric order, like a swirling vortex, or think of, also you could unplug your bathtub and see that make a vortex. Gravitational energy will produce that order. The kind of order we have in life is not repetitive order or symmetric order. It's actually information, or it's complex order. And so these non-equilibrium thermodynamics explanations do a good job of explaining what doesn't need to be explained in life. If you think of the genetic code or any sequence of digital characters, if you get a repeat, ABC, 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 or in the genes, if you got AG, 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 that would be a highly repetitive order, but it's not informational. It doesn't have the capacity to produce a complex three-dimensional protein fold. That type of what's required there is much more like language. I use an example in my book of a series of randomly arranged characters, a series of repetitive characters, and then a sequence like time and tide wait for no man. That third type of sequence we say is specified and complex. It's the kind of order we have in information. Its arrangements are not rigidly repeating, and yet it's specified in order to perform a function. And so that's what the kind of thing that's got to be explained in biology, not just something like a vortex or a swirling tornado. Now, recently, there's been a scientist, Jeremy England, who was at MIT, now he's at Georgia Tech, who's written on something called, they're called dissipation theorems. And these purport to show that you can have, life is special in two ways. It's special because it's a low entropy system, and it also has a lot of energy. It's high thermal energy. And to get those two things, it's highly ordered, but in a specific informational way, and it's storing energy. And so that makes life very difficult to explain. It's unusual. If we look out, we see lots of things that have energy in them, but they're not highly ordered, especially not with informational order. And we see lots of things that might be low entropy, but they don't have energy. Life has those two things in concert. Now, there are these dissipation theorems that say that can happen in very specific circumstances. And so Jeremy England wrote some articles saying, hey, maybe this is a way that this might show some promise for explaining the origin of life from purely physical thermodynamic considerations. What Brian showed, however, was that these same dissipation theorems show that to get low entropy and high thermal energy in the same system, you can do it, but you can only do it if you have an engine that converts energy in very specific ways to that low entropy system, and also only if you have information. So you need an engine and information. In fact, to build engines like ATP molecules inside cells, you've got to put a lot of proteins together in a very particular way. So you're going to need a lot of information. So you can get the order for free if you have the pre-existing information. And that's been the whole basis of our case for intelligent design in life, is that information is something that we know only arises from a mind, from an intelligence. So these dissipation theorems that look like they were going to provide an avenue for explaining the origin of life from fundamental physical principles actually just underscored in a new way the need for prior unexplained information that we think, again, can only be explained by reference to a mind.
Good. Well, thank you. And I'm gonna follow on that same thought. I'm speaking right now to Dr. Stephen Meyer, and so, Dr. Stephen Meyer, I'm going to follow along that same thought. You know that I have not been a proponent of intelligent design, though I'm quite sympathetic with the arguments. Neither have I contested with intelligent design. My whole argument has been I don't have a chemical tool to measure it, and I am holding my colleagues to using our chemical tools to define what they're proposing. So they tell these stories and they say, okay, well, what chemical tool did you use so that you could tell me this story? What was it that you measured? So what would you say that to move me even closer toward intelligent design if I don't have a tool to measure it? What are the ways that are being thought about to really put a measure on this? Because your colleague, Dr. Brian Miller, told me that that's what they're moving toward.
Well, it's a great question, and this is what's been so enjoyable for me about our conversations is that, in a sense, we're looking at the same reality, at two sides of the same coin, because you've been analyzing these prebiotic simulation experiments and showing that the chemistry doesn't want to do what the origin of life biologists say it must do in order to produce life, right? It's not. It doesn't move in a life-friendly direction. In those first Miller-Urey experiments, unless there was the investigator interference to prevent the interfering cross reactions, this experiments would terminate in a substance called melanoidin, which was a kind of sludge that had absolutely nothing to do with life. So the investigator had to reach in and take out the byproducts that they didn't want and make sure that, that they didn't get those interfering cross reactions, and then introduce something else at just the right time. And still, we didn't get very far along the way. So you've just done this fantastic job with the benefit of your expertise in synthetic organic chemistry, of showing this fundamental truth that the chemistry, organic chemistry, does not move in a naturally in a life-friendly direction. And what you've done is you've called out these investigators for the way in which they've interfered with the experiments, where they've set them up, they've choreographed them, they've interfered, and use their own intelligence to get what limited positive results are possible. And so that I think has been a really powerful negative critique of the plausibility of these origin of life scenarios. What I've done in looking at the logic of origin of life simulation experiments and in the logic of historical scientific theorizing is to show that there's also a positive case for intelligent design. In part, it's based on something we can measure, and that is the amount of information that is present or would need to be present in even the simplest living cell. Because we have the ability to calculate very precisely the probabilistic resources of the entire universe. And I made some of these calculations in Signature in the Cell. So if you get beyond a particular threshold of information, we know that it will always be more likely that undirected material processes did not produce that information than it is that the undirected material processes did produce that information. And we're way beyond that threshold. And I unpack that quantitative threshold and the sort of probabilistic argument in Signature in the Cell. But there's more to the case for intelligent design than just the measurement of information. It's also our uniform and repeated experience of what it takes to generate information. And here I build in my case for intelligent design off of the work of Charles Darwin and the other 19th century historical scientists who developed a method of reasoning for investigating the events in the remote past and what caused those events. And their key insight was, if you want to explain an event in the remote past, you need to posit a cause which is known in our experience, in our present experience, to produce the effect in question. And I came across this first in the work of Darwin and then in Lyell. Lyell had a long Victorian subtitle on his famous book of Principles of Geology. It was being an attempt to explain the former changes of the Earth's surface by reference to causes now in operation. That's the critical methodological principle in historical science. And origin of life biology is an historical science. If we want to figure out what caused life to come into existence or what caused the information necessary to produce life, we need to ask, well, what is the cause now in operation that produces information? And as I began to frame that question, I realized we know of only one such cause that produces information, especially information in a digital form, such as the information we find in DNA and RNA. And that cause is an intelligent agent. Whether we're talking about a hieroglyphic inscription or a paragraph in a book or digital code in a computer program or information embedded in a radio signal, whenever we trace information back to its ultimate source, we always come to a mind, not an undirected process. And now, curiously, even origin of life biochemists have confirmed this principle with their very simulation experiments that you've critiqued so powerfully. Because what they've shown is that to get, for example, there's a particular type of origin of life experiment called a ribozyme engineering experiment, where the origin of life scientists are trying to produce an RNA molecule will both store information and catalyze reactions, and even hoping that they'll get one that can partially copy itself, a replicase, to get some kind of natural selection going at a prebiotic level. To date, they've been able to engineer RNA molecules that can copy about 10% of themselves. But to do that, the origin of life biochemist, the ribozyme engineer, has to precisely sequence the nucleotide bases on the RNA molecule to get even that limited self-replicating capacity, to make even that limited capacity possible. So what's being simulated? What's being simulated is that to generate information, you need a mind. Even RNA world experiments are showing this same principle, that intelligence is the prerequisite of information. And I remember years ago at that same conference, you gave that excellent talk on how information could exist in the cloud because we can put it there. Because if there's a mind, you can put information in a cloud. It can be stored on any material medium. So I think both our ordinary experience and our scientific experience has confirmed this principle that information always comes from a mind. So the discovery of information at the foundation of life therefore becomes a powerful indicator of prior intelligent activity using the methodological principles and the scientific method of reasoning that Darwin himself employed in the Origin of Species. So a proper historical scientific inference.
Okay. Well, that sort of answers one of the first questions that's popped up from the audience. So now I'm gonna start reading off some questions from the audience, and there's several of them. So try to answer them fairly concisely, Steve. It says, Dr. Meyer, how would you combat somebody who believes in the multiverse, an infinite number of universes, so that life had to happen eventually?
Lots of physicists will now say, you know, you've got a choice in how to interpret the fine-tuning evidence. You can either say it's the result of some kind of supermind, a theistic design interpretation, or you can opt for the multiverse. It's kind of a wash. The multiverse is the idea that that improbability gets massively diminished because there are so many universes that the right conditions had to arise somewhere. The problem with this explanation, there's multiple problems, but the biggest one is this, that you can't just posit other universes, because if all the other universes are separate from ours, having no causal interaction, then things that happen in those other universes don't affect anything that happens in our universe, including the probabilities of the fine-tuning. So proponents of the sort of naturalistic approach to explaining the fine-tuning realize that, and realize that to explain the origin of the fine-tuning, they needed a universe generating mechanism, something that would allow them to portray our universe as the outcome of a kind of cosmic lottery in which the universe generating mechanisms spitting out lots of different universes, and would then ours just happen to be the lucky one. And that's where the rub comes in, because both of the speculative cosmologies have been used to posit or to explain the multiverse, or to generate multiple universes. Inflationary cosmology and theory require universe generating mechanisms that themselves require prior unexplained fine-tuning. So in the inflationary universe, for example, the inflaton field has to shut off with the right energies in just the right narrow window of time. And there's incredibly precise fine-tuning associated with that. So in order to explain fine-tuning, you posit multiverse, but for the multiverse to actually explain fine-tuning, you need a universe generating mechanism, but the universe generating mechanisms require prior unexplained fine-tuning. So the multiverse doesn't really get rid of the fine-tuning, it just pushes it back one generation.
Good. I remember you and I were at a meeting one time together, and a Nobel laureate was pushed giving an explanation for this, and he said, well, we're here, so it must have happened.
Yes, yeah.
And that was as good as he could get. And I remember you and I looked over at each other like, boy, we wish we had some more substance than that.
You get the same thing with the origin of life problem. Is since we're here, it must have evolved by chemical evolution, but we don't have a model and we don't have a plausible reaction. But since we're here, it must have happened. But what's assumed in that is that it must have happened materialistically, and obviously it may have been designed. Right. Same thing with the fine-tuning of the universe.
Right. So here's another question. It's this type of question that gets me angry, but you're a much calmer person than I am. A documentary I saw said it's possible to have the universe pop into existence on its own, entirely spontaneously, entirely uncaused, and entirely in accordance with the laws of physics. What's your answer to that?
Well, these questions are fun and great because I've just been writing on all of this. This is my new book, Return the God Hypothesis, is specifically addressing the counter arguments to the fine-tuning argument, which is the multiverse, and the arguments to the cosmological first cause argument, which is something called quantum. And the idea there is that the universe, when the universe is very, very small, inside what's called Planck time, it would have been small enough to be describable by the mathematics associated with physics. And there's a couple of very weird paradoxes that are strange things that come out of this. This has been invoked as a way of getting around the idea that of the Kalam first cause argument. Whatever begins to exist must have a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe must have had a cause. Since causes are separate from themselves, the cause must be a transcendent cause, something beyond matter, space, time, and energy. That's been an increasingly popular argument, marshaled by people like William Lane Craig, based on the discovery that the universe did in fact have a beginning. This quantum cosmology stuff has been an attempt to circumvent that by saying, well, in the smallest smidge of time, just after the beginning, the universe could have been described using quantum physics. And they use something called a universal wave function that describes all the possible states of affairs the universe might have had, and then it claimed that if the universal wave function that comes out of these equations of quantum physics describes a universe like ours, as one of the possibilities, then it explains the origin of our universe. A couple weird problems, though. Before there's a universe, the quantum cosmologists depict reality as essentially purely mathematical, simply this universal wave function. And one of the most perceptive of these physicists, Alexander Valinsky, has said, well, wait a minute. If before there's a physical universe, all there is this universal wave function describing mathematically all the possible universes that exist, that's a purely mathematical reality. And math typically exists in minds. Are we then saying by our quantum cosmological modeling of the origin of the universe that the universe came out of a mind? He raises that as a rhetorical question in the last chapter of his book, The Many Worlds in One, and never really answers it. Hawking, who also was a proponent of quantum cosmology, asked a similar question. He said, what puts fire in the equations that give them a world to describe? Math by itself has no causal efficacy. It isn't something that causes things to happen. Math is something that exists in a mind that we use to describe things that happen in the world. So these types of explanations depend on the strange proposition that math produces matter. And that's very weird. In fact, it seems to be almost Platonic and certainly a bit theistic, because math also, in our experience, only exists in a mind. And secondly, prior to all that, to get this universal wave function that's supposedly explaining the universe from math alone, there's a prior equation that has to be solved called the Wheeler-DeWitt equation. It's the analog of the Schrödinger equation from quantum physics. And that equation can't be solved unless the physicist chooses specific constraints on the equation. Otherwise has an infinite number of solutions unless the physicist degrees of freedom by imposing what are called boundary conditions. And those are always chosen with an end in mind, to get a universe out the other end like ours. So it's very much like the origin of life simulation experiments, where the simulator, in this case the mathematical modeler, is constraining possibilities, inputting information to get an outcome that he wants. So again, what's actually being simulated is the need for a creator or a mind to bring a universe like ours into existence. So even though quantum cosmological explanations say you get universe to pop into existence from the laws of physics alone, presuppose some things that are really very theistic in their implications.
Okay, the next one. Is it possible God made other forms of life on other galaxies or universe with their own rules, i.e. Bible? If so, would that undermine the argument for intelligent design? Also, what about SETI program? Doesn't the method that we use to search for alien life argue for intelligent design?
Great question. Let me take the second one first. It's a bit more straightforward. The SETI method is in fact predicated on the assumption that information in digital and specified form that we define carefully among proponents is a definitive indicator of intelligence. So they're looking for things like the prime number sequence, okay, something like that. And if they find it, they're going to say, ah, that's an intelligent agent. That's information embedded in a radio signal. So the presupposition of SETI is that information, specified complexity, the indicator of intelligent activity. They haven't found that yet in any radio signal, any other signal coming from outer space. but it's interesting that it presupposes the very method of design detection used by intelligent design proponents. And secondly, we found that kind of information at the foundation of life in DNA and RNA and proteins. As for life on another planet, I think, or in probably other galaxies, we know there is no life on the other planets in our solar system. We have now found some extrasolar planets, but as I understand it, they have highly eccentric orbits. All the ones that have been identified are not life friendly, and that they pass way too close and come way too far away from their host suns. The temperature variations are too great. But if life were found on another planet, I don't think that would undermine the case for intelligent design. Likely, if we studied that life, it would require prior foundational information as well, and that would be an indicator of intelligent design. We don't have any indication from science or from the Bible that there is life, but it's not impossible from either perspective. So I'm open to that, and I don't think it's dispositive for the question of intelligent design one way or another. Should we find it?
You're really,
we haven't yet.
You're really good at answering these. Dr. Meyer, what arguments do naturalists/materialists think are practical in understanding that the material world as we know it had a beginning/the Big Bang?
Well, that's another great question, and it's a wonderful story of how we discovered the beginning. Jim and I were at a conference a couple summers ago with a French astrophysicist, Jean-Pierre Luminet, who's written a book in French about the invention of the Bang, and it's fascinating story. The key evidence, I think, the first big evidence was the discovery that the galaxy sky, there was the light coming from the distant galaxies was shifted in that red direction. With a few anomalies here and there, but overwhelming testimony of an expanding universe. So that was the first big thing. The other thing, the other really big indicator came out of theoretical physics with Einstein's general relativity and the field equations of general relativity that were later solved by Hawking and Penrose and George Ellis. And this suggested that Einstein's theory was that matter curves space, and he knew that if matter, therefore that if gravitation was the only force in the universe, then we should have long ago collapsed in on all the matter collapsed in on itself, and we should have a kind of giant black hole. But since we don't live in that kind of universe, we live in a universe with celestial bodies with a great deal of space between them. There must be some counteracting force of expansion, and if there's an expanding force, then that implies most likely that we live in a dynamic universe that is expanding in size. And Einstein didn't like that implication at first. He tried to gerrymander the forces with something called the cosmological constant, and give it exactly the right values so that the expanding force and the contracting force were just right. But that level of fine tuning was implausible, and it didn't work. And then later they found the evidence of the expansion with the red shift. Then there are a whole series of other evidences that came online, the cosmic background radiation and others. So the evidence for the Big Bang is, I think, widely accepted by scientists of all philosophical persuasions. The question is, what do you make of it philosophically? I think the beginning implies a descendant cause beyond matter, space, time, and energy. I think it does provide it. I think the discovery does have theistic implications.
What's your opinion?
I've not heard too much about that. I would say that in the proponents of intelligent design come in lots of different philosophical persuasions. Most are theists, but some are agnostics. I happen to be a Christian and a proponent of intelligent design. And I think a biblical understanding of design in nature or of nature is twofold. We should expect from a biblical point of view to see evidence of design, original design or aboriginal design. But from a biblical point of view, we should also expect to see evidence of decay. In fact, I think in Romans it says that the nature is in bondage to decay. The created order is in bondage to decay. And so I become very interested in the evidence we have of both of those things. And I think without getting into a very detailed, what's called a theodicy of how evil entered the world, and theologians think about that a lot, I think generally we see exactly what we ought to expect from a biblical point of view. We see exquisite evidence of design, but we see evidence of that design being eroded or decayed or degraded, or of degradation. And we have a colleague at University of Idaho, Scott Minnick, who works on virulence. And he tells me that among microbiologists who look at virulent bacteria and viruses that are nasty to humans, that invariably what you have is either an information loss from an aboriginal system that wasn't harmful to us, or information being expressed out of its original and proper context. So I think that we're seeing at a microbiological level both evidence of design and evidence of subsequent decay. That's, after all, what a mutation is. So I think the biblical natural theology or theology of nature comports well with what we see in nature.
Okay. That dovetails right into this question. All the recent talk of viruses has caused me to wonder about the idea of God breathing life into Adam. While Adam would already need to be alive to be affected by viruses as we understand them, this causes me to ponder how God breathing life into Adam could have been a far more literal process than I've previously considered. To borrow a phrase from the Green Mile, could God have somehow infected us with life? And could viruses be a key to understanding how something like this might have happened?
Very interesting. This dovetails beautifully with the previous question. Scott Minnick has shown that, for example, the plague bacterium, and we're not talking about viruses yet, but the plague bacterium, which has been a very striking example of what theologians call natural evil, is the result of 4 discernible mutations from an aboriginal bacterium for which our bodies had a natural immune response. It was a completely benign bacterium that was altered by this series of mutations. So that would be an example of that kind of decay or degradation of a beautifully and well-designed original system. Now, we have another colleague, Don Ewert, who's a virologist, who's working on this same issue. Viruses cause a lot of problems. So what happened? Were they originally designed, or were they? And he's working on a theory, and there's quite a lot of support for this in general, that viruses have had an original role of effectively, they were part of an information processing system that maintained the proper balance of different bacterial organisms, for example, in the human gut or in the gut of other mammals, that we need a particular balance of different bacterial species, and that viruses were a way of transferring genetic information laterally to maintain this proper balance of different species of bacteria in the larger bacterial populations. So that's a new idea and a new take on this, but it's very interesting, and he's working on a very detailed paper on it and finding a lot that supports it. So it's a kind of an active area of interest for ID proponents. The bacterial question is making a lot of sense as far as evidence of design and decay. And there's an interesting avenue of research developing, or an interesting hypothesis that's being developed about viruses. So stay tuned on that. It shows how the ID concept is generating a lot of new research ideas.
Okay. As a philosopher of science, what do you think is the best way to differentiate scientific, philosophical, and religious questions and issues? Where do questions of design fit in?
the second question is a bit easier to answer than the first. I think questions of design are questions of historical scientific research. You can use the method I described a bit earlier. It's called the method of multiple competing hypotheses. It's used as a standard method in geology, evolutionary biology, archaeology. It's a method that's used when you can't repeat something under controlled laboratory conditions necessarily, and where you need to make an inference about past causes of events in the, or make an inference to determine the cause of an event in the remote past. And so design detection is a retrodictive inference. We look at an effect and try to determine what type of cause best explains it. Was it chance? Was it natural laws or necessity? Was it some combination of the two? Or was it an intelligent agent? All of those are possibilities. We know that intelligent agents act and they leave certain types of signatures of their activity behind. When we find those signatures, it allows us to retrodict back to a designing mind. I think the crucial signature of intelligence is information. And so I think that's the type of inquiry that allows you to detect design. That's a type of forensic science or historical science. It's part of what I characterized in my PhD thesis, and I've done a fair amount of further writing on that in the books that Jim kindly showed at the beginning of the interview. So that's the kind of science I think intelligent design is. It's different than straight bench science or theoretical physics. There are different types of sciences with different types of methods. And then that gets to the second question: how do we characterize science? Typically, in an undergraduate science class, we'll learn about the scientific method. But in fact, there are many different scientific methods. There's sciences that are concerned with classification. There are sciences that are concerned with simulation. There are sciences that are concerned with the formulation of general physical laws. There are sciences that are more forensic in character, that are trying to discern provide causal explanations for particular facts or particular events. And all of these different types of sciences have different methods. And so the simplistic hypothetico-deductive method that we all learn in, physics 110 or chemistry 101, that's a good method, but it's not the only method of scientific reasoning. And so recognizing that there is a multiplicity of methods makes it difficult to say how in general we distinguish science from philosophy or religion. And that's something in philosophy of science known as the demarcation problem. It's a notoriously difficult thing to give a simple definition of science that allows us to distinguish science from these other modes of inquiry, especially because some of those modes of inquiry in philosophy and philosophy of science, that method of multiple competing hypotheses and inferring to the best explanation is used just as it's used in the historical sciences or sometimes in theoretical physics. So I'm of the opinion that there's not as much clear demarcation between the natural sciences and philosophy or philosophy of science as one might think. And even in religion, we were talking at the very beginning of the interview about the resurrection. The case for the resurrection is based on historical evidence, and it uses the same method of reasoning, namely inference to the best explanation. The apologetic case for the resurrection uses the same method of reasoning that Darwin used in The Origin of Species, the method of inference to the best explanation, trying to explain what caused a particular fact or set of facts to arise in history. So it's difficult to form a strict demarcation. I think it's easier to demarcate different types of scientific reasoning and different types of philosophical reasoning than to give one clear-cut science versus philosophy sort of demarcation. But I write about that a fair bit in the end of Signature in the Cell, and I give a more complete account of this problem of definition. The key thing, though, is not how do you define an argument or how do you define a truth claim, but whether or not the truth claim is true or false. Is the argument valid or sound? So the case for it doesn't so much matter whether the case for intelligent design is science or philosophy or a combination of the two or historical science. What's of most concern is whether or not it's true. Does the evidence support the claim based on our knowledge of cause and effect and so forth?
Wow.
Sorry,
you're amazing.
That wasn't very
Steve.
succinct.
No, you're
well,
amazing.
you are too.
Just
these
amazing.
are great questions.
You know, so somebody's asked me a question. The next question that's up here is to me, and I'm not even sure I can answer it. So it says, Dr. Tour, do you find the method of competing hypotheses that Meyer presents for the origin of life an adequate test? You know, I, Stephen knows this. I look at this somewhat differently than would a philosopher of science. I just look at the chemistry, and it is glaring to me that even with all of the input of the investigator, they still don't even get close, because as human beings, we have no idea how to even influence the system to make it happen. So I don't know how to really answer your question to me. I just look at this very differently as somebody who just has to make stuff all day, rather than thinking about the deep implications of it. Other than that, we have no idea how to do it. Steve, help me out here.
Yeah, let me run at that, because I think actually our two ways of looking this just dovetail beautifully. And in fact, what you're in the framework of the method of multiple competing hypotheses, what you've determined is that these proposed explanations for in prebiotic synthesis of whether it's sugars or amino acids or metabolic pathways or whatever, that these proposed hypotheses lack causal adequacy. They're not consistent with what we know about what ordinarily happens in chemistry. So if you take Lyell's dictum that the present is the key to the past, and we look at what chemistry does now, these hypotheses positing certain chemical processes as the basis for the organic synthesis of the prebiotic monomers or polymers or whatever, we can say those hypotheses are not causally adequate. They don't meet the test of experience. They're not consistent with our uniform and repeated experience of what chemistry does in the present. We don't have a cause now in operation that produces the thing that needs to be explained. So that what you're doing fits beautifully into the methodological framework that origin of life people use. They say they use, although they often punt when they don't get the answer they want. But it fits into the methodological characterization of the field that I've provided. And that same methodological framework is the basis, I argue, for making a positive inference for intelligent design. So we're on the same page here. I'm just doing a little bit of self-conscious characterization of the underlying methodology. And you're just saying as a chemist, gee, this flat doesn't work. And saying it flat doesn't work is another way of saying it lacks causal adequacy. What they're positing as the cause doesn't produce the effect that's needed to produce life.
There you go. There's one final question here, and we're going to close with this one. And it's actually related to the way you just finished. They're asking, Dr. Meyer, what's the difference between life and consciousness?
Well, maybe we just stumped the questioner or the question responder. Well, there are many forms of life that are exhibit aversive responses to stimuli, to which we would not attribute either sentience or consciousness. So there are one-celled bacteria we do not think exhibit characteristics of conscious agency. We know of consciousness. This is a great point that our colleague J.P. Moreland at Biola University makes. We know of the reality of consciousness because we are conscious minds ourselves. We have direct introspective experience of what it means to be a conscious mind. And much of the rest of our knowledge of the world is derived indirectly or inferentially from that first-person knowledge of being a conscious agent. So because we understand intuitively the connection between our own conscious awareness and the kinds of outcomes or behaviors that we can affect. I can pick up a ball and throw it because I have an intention to throw a strike across the plate. I can write a sentence because I mean to communicate something. So I can infer the existence of other conscious minds because I can see the distinctive effects of my own consciousness being expressed by other conscious minds. I can also see that there are other types of organisms that exhibit lifelike behaviors that are responding to their environment in various ways that don't exhibit the distinctive effects of conscious awareness. And so we've made this distinction. Seems pretty intuitive and obvious, but we can unpack it if we think about it real carefully, between consciousness, sentience, and mere vitality. And there's a kind of a hierarchy in life, and we realize that some forms of life have consciousness like we do. Animals have a form of animal consciousness. In the Bible, they're called the nephesh. They have a mind, but not a spirit. And then there are things like bacteria and plants that have clearly exhibit lifelike characteristics without that. So I think that's about the best we can do. I don't know if we can get a great definition, but what we know of consciousness, I think we know very well. And a lot of the problem of materialism in science is that we want to say mind is somehow not a factor, but scientists who say that forget the role of their own minds. They're impervious to the role of their own minds, and I think that's a mistake. And it shows up in particular in Origin of Life chemistry, where the mind of the scientist is the crucial factor driving the chemistry forward, and yet the scientist is completely oblivious to that.
Well, I agree with that.
I might be talking myself into a
Yeah,
hole.
we'll stop there. I agree with that, Dr. Stephen Meyer. I agree with that scientists are really oblivious to their own consciousness and what's going on in the experiments that they do in this area. And one day I was building what was called a synthetic brain, and this was right around 2000, 2001, in that time period under a DARPA contract. And I had said that we were going to build this brain, and it was going to be semi-conscious, knowing from computer science that to define consciousness is very hard. So I called it semi-conscious. And at that point, I knew nobody was going to argue with me because it was too complex to figure out what I might have meant. But Steve, I want to thank you so much for joining us on this beginning podcast that I have, the Science and Faith podcast with Dr. James Tour. You've just brought out so much, and it's just fun listening to you and your ability to pull from philosophy and science across from the geological to the biological and the chemical, and just pack all this together in a single talk after talking to us about the physical resurrection of Jesus Christ, which is absolutely the most important thing in life. And the other thing it demonstrates is that you can be a conscious individual with a huge amount of education in physics and in science and philosophy, and still believe wholeheartedly in the physical resurrection of Jesus Christ, that he has risen from the dead, and his life, because he lives, we live also. His life in us is what takes us and elevates us into a relationship with his Father. It is all because of Jesus. He is so good. Thank you,
Changes
Steve.
everything. Absolutely, my friend. And it's always a pleasure to interact with you.
I've been involved in Jewish outreach for over
I mean, I'm afraid I'm more. I'm afraid. I've watched your other interviews, and I love them, by the way. And by the way, shout out to Atheist Edge, Jim. One of my favorite interviews. I couldn't have even seen any flaws in that interview. It was so good, so entertaining, both of you.
Right. So number one, Jim is awesome. I was just talking to him a little bit earlier today, by the way, over Messenger. So he's a great guy. I love that guy.
I want to start off by saying you're in Brazil, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry for the wait. It's been a long, crazy day, and this is the fastest we could get to you. I'm sorry you had to wait so long. Okay, from the time I booked your show to now, I've learned a few things about you. And I'm not going to hold it against you, but I learned that a few of my atheist friends have blocked you, have said that you're a troll, and that you're not allowed to be on the Atheist Experience anymore or some of the other shows. And first, I want to give you the opportunity to defend yourself. I want to give you the opportunity to plead your case why you're sincere and not a troll.
Well, to be honest, I'm surprised that this is the justification for not let me to call in again the Atheist Experience. Last time when I called in, I asked the attendee why the hosts made that decision. And they said that I was preaching, that I was not productive, that basically that. So now telling that I'm a troll surprises me. If you have followed me on my Facebook timeline, that, and I suppose that you have made an idea by your own about what I'm writing about, what my views are, and so on.
I am of the opinion, okay, this is how we work on the show. First off, our show is a little bit different than most atheist YouTube channels. We are about bridging the divide between believers and non-believers. We're trying to find common ground. We're in search of truth. We're not trying to change any minds. And we are not confrontational. We're not, in your face type of atheists. I'm willing to give you a clean, not a clean slate, the benefit of the doubt. I don't care how my fellow atheists treat you. I'm going to judge you on your own merit based on how you interact with us. I have many friends in the atheist community that ask me, why are you friends with that other atheist? There's all kinds of drama and infighting. And I'm saying, I'm friends with that atheist because of X. I'm friends with you because of X. If you don't get along, that has nothing to do with me. So that's where we're coming from. We're gonna speak to you as if I don't know any of that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Okay. Now, just to get started, there was a Facebook little interaction today, and I can't remember it. Should I pull it up, or do you remember? Is it fresh in your mind? Because we just got done with 10 hours of recording. So do you remember the interaction we had today on Facebook? Do you remember the topic?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Let's
It was about, yeah, it is about what the purpose is of Christians to reach out to unbelievers,
Okay.
and if we try to convert them.
And
I replied to you that if my expectation would be to be successful in the sense that talking to you and providing to you my reasons for being a Christian and for believing in the existence of a God, that I would expect you to eventually convert yourself and accept my views and so on. If that would be my expectation, then for sure I would not be here talking to you right now. I would be frustrated and say, well, this is a waste of time and so on. So I'm never talking to anyone about my beliefs with any expectations. I leave that to my listeners, to my opponents, to the people I'm talking to them, to make up their minds by themselves. If they think what I believe is sound or not, that's their business. I see myself reporting to my God, and I'm trying to do what He commanded me to do. That is to proclaim the gospel, and to atheists why I believe I can do that without preaching, without the Bible, without referring to theism, but basically based on science and philosophy,
I want to show you the perfect tool for making stunning videos without leaving the house. Just go to artgrid.io. It's a revolutionary stock footage platform. New footage is added from the best filmmakers every day, and I get unlimited downloads, so anything I download is mine to use forever.
So the concept we're thinking of is authentic journey, so it needs to look amazing.
So I can keep delivering high-quality content even in today's challenging times. Clips are uploaded in stories, so my editing options are endless. And the license covers everything, even commercial use. Now that's a game changer.
Providing the reasons in the first place why I'm a theist and not an atheist. And when someone comes to the same conclusion as I do, that theism makes more sense than atheism, then we can go a step further and elucidate which religion or which faith system makes most sense. That would be a further step ahead.
Did you have something? Okay, listen.
I wanted.
Oh,
Well, I
okay.
didn't want to. I want to make sure that we're clear on what
Right.
his position is.
Right. Okay. So let me give you the TLDR. While you were talking, I was trying to look it up on your page, but I couldn't find it. Okay. He made a claim that nowhere in the Bible does it say to go out and convert non-believers to Christianity. Am I steel manning you so far? Am I correctly representing your position?
Yes, the
Okay.
Great Commission is by Christ, go and preach the gospel.
Right.
That
Okay.
means just providing to others the information about who Christ is, what he did, and so on, and then leave it to the people that are the listeners to make up their minds. And if they actually believe that
Okay.
Christ is the
Let me
one
jump
he
in.
said to be, then is the second part to make disciples, to lead them to how to
Right.
live a Christian life.
Okay, so if I'm correct in assuming that nowhere, okay, your claim was that nowhere in the Bible does it say go out and make non-believers believers. You said creating disciples is
Yeah.
different than making non-believers.
Convert.
Yes.
I say that the process of conversion is something that the listener, he must convert himself. He must convince himself that believing in God makes sense.
Okay, here now I'm just going to read, I'm going to paraphrase 5 verses in the New Testament. We're going to start with Matthew 28:16. The 11 disciples went to Galilee. There was a mountain. Jesus told them where to go. Then he saw them. They worshiped Jesus, but some of the 11 disciples doubted him. Then Jesus said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, he's saying to the 11 disciples, he's saying, go forth and make disciples of all nations, baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Teach them to obey everything I have commanded to you. Surely I'm with you always. Now, that's 16. That's 16. Now we'll go to 17. Oh, wait, shit, I'm in the wrong one. Anyway, what he's saying, okay, there's really no way to take that in a different context other than Jesus told his 11 apostles to go forth and spread the word, baptize them, which means if you baptize someone, you're making them a Christian. If you go and with all the authority on heaven and earth, go for and make disciples of them. If you take someone from non-believer status to disciple, you have converted them. What I'm saying is, I don't know why you're trying to get around the fact that Christianity teaches to go out and make Christians. Why are you so hesitant to admit that?
I've been many times accused of trying to convert non-believers to believers. And I say that the process of conversion is something that the listener, he must do that. He must listen, and then he must decide for himself if he thinks that the gospel makes sense or not. And if he wants to convert, if he wants to surrender to Christ and start to following Christ or not. That decision-making is not my business. Okay, so that is the crucial point in my view. My business is to tell you what I believe. What you do with that message is your business. It's not my business.
But it was a
Now, if
specific-
you decide that this is something that you want to do, then I am asked to make you a disciple. That means to teach the new convert how to start following Christ, to baptize, and how to live as a Christian.
You know.
He made a specific claim that it's not
I
their
know.
job to make Christians.
Well,
Okay.
in a way, okay, I get what you're saying.
This is everything he
Angelo.
quoted. This is everything we quoted. Right
Okay, so yes, in a sense, you're both right, because Jim is just trying to get home the point that, yeah, you are supposed to give good reasons for your faith. You're commanded. What is it, 1 Peter or whatever it is that tells you you're supposed to give reasons for the joy that you feel in your heart, and the Great Commission tells you to, and there is that, right? So, but I get what you're saying. You're saying, look, it's not my job to make you a Christian. I'm presenting this information to you, and whether or not you want to accept the veracity of it is on you, and the ultimate decision rests with whether or not you want to give your life to this idea. That's what you're saying in a nutshell. I'm trying to be as charitable as I can with my description of what you're saying, and I do understand why you would want to say that, because if you follow that train of thought and that line that you're going down there, it ultimately ends in, well, it's not God's fault if you go to hell and get tortured for eternity. It's ultimately the decision you made for yourself. And I see that as very chintzy, very kind of like you're kind of fulfilling your own prophecy by taking the stance that you're taking on this, and pretty much all Christians take on this, is that, yeah, ultimately you're damning yourself. And really just people who don't believe in this stuff anymore have a hard time believing that, because if the God is the maximally powerful being that you describe, and the all omnibenevolent being, the all good and all just being that you describe, he would have been able to, in all of his infinite power, to be able to set up a world where it wouldn't have taken people being judged unworthy and being tortured for all eternity for people to learn how to have society and have humanity and be good people and positive moral agents in the world. He would have been able to do it without having to put humanity through that. So unless you can explain that to me, I don't really see how you taking the stance that you're taking, even though we're correctly describing it, how it gets you in the moral high ground, as it were, in the grand scheme of whether or not it's up to us or not. Whether or not it's up to us, the God could have done differently, but he didn't. You have to get past that and then explain that before you get anybody to kind of agree with all that.
Dude,
You know what I'm
I put on some of your beard oil. This shit is the tits, man. It makes you feel so soft. And all right, sorry, go ahead.
Anyway, yeah, but I do understand. I know what, and I kind of accept the way that you're describing what your kind of stand on it is, and I accept that, and we'll try to work around that as much as we can.
I have heard your point or your question mark, and I see it that way. I have a topic on my library on the web, and someone wrote an article just answering that point. And what they basically say is that God is giving enough light for people that want to live with him, to recognize him, to surrender to him. And he gives enough shadow or darkness for people that do not want him to deny him.
He gives you enough rope to hang
Yeah,
yourself?
so I was about to say, he gives you enough free will so that you can reject him on bad evidence and then fry you for using the faculties of mind
But
that he gave you.
that only works great if you know ahead of time
Yeah.
that the person offering the free will exists. For instance, let me give you an example. I know my father exists. When I was a young boy, I knew my father exists. I could see him, touch him, jump in his arms. If he were to have taken me and thrown me into a walk-in closet for 10 years of my childhood and only open it just to give me food and say, I will let you out if you admit that you love me and worship me and fall to your knees to my, then I would have two options: stay in the dark closet, or I don't know how you can make yourself love, or my father exists. So if all he wants is to accept that he is there for me, then okay, then I'm out of the closet. But this dilemma only works if this choice only works if we know for a fact that the person offering the gift of salvation is true. And now, as it is, I would ask you, and I would assume that you would think that we are going to perish because of our unbelief, for the crime of doubting.
Well, first of all, let me clarify following. The Bible presupposes the existence of God. It doesn't, it starts in the first verse in the Bible: in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So there isn't even a question mark in regards of if he actually exists or not. Mm-hmm. Actually, the whole fight in the Old Testament was about false gods, was about the nations surrounding Israel having these gods which they offered children sacrifices, all that kind of stuff, and that was the big fight in the Old Testament. So you don't find in the Bible a treatise or just a part where God tries to evidence himself, providing good reasons why he actually exists rather than not. So that's not even a question mark. And we read in Romans 1 that through observing the natural world, everyone can recognize that a creator exists, and people that deny it, they suppress the truth. So
believe that we're atheists.
The Bible goes that on that line of reasoning, that there is absolutely no reason to actually doubt about God's existence.
There's no reason to doubt the Bible?
Well,
why is that?
Do you know Romans 1:18 to 23?
No, sir.
No, wait.
No, sir.
Can
you
I?
Cannot. No. Hold on. We can't. No. You cannot. I asked you what makes you so sure that the claim, which is the Bible, is the claim. What makes you so sure that there's no question of whether or not it could be wrong? And what you did is you tried.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, Lori, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Oh, hello. My sound is not working.
I cannot hear you. Just let me check what's going on here. I cannot hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hold on.
Yeah, I cannot hear Lori. I don't know what's happening.
Hello. Test. Test, 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 test. Test, test.
I cannot hear you.
Test, test. Mine seems to be working. I don't know. Mine's working. I can see it. Can see it now. Can you hear me? It's not working.
Hello?
I can hear you, and on my
Fine.
screen it shows it's working.
Hello?
I can hear
I
you.
should be able to hear you, but I'm unable to hear you. I don't know why.
They're saying you have me muted.
Strange.
I can hear you. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know. Well, do you want me to try again some other time? Hello? Oh,
Hello?
can you hear me now? I can just barely hear you.
Hello? Hello?
Hi, I can hear you. I can hear you very good.
No sound. Just a moment. Oh, okay. Okay, I got it. Hello?
Yeah. Hello, I can hear you. Can you
Yeah,
hear me?
now I got it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes. Just a moment. Just a moment. Okay. Okay, sorry for
Okay,
that.
that's
Yeah.
okay. How are you on Tangelo?
Yes, I'm fine, thanks, and you?
Good, good.
So where are you
I-
from?
I'm from New England area. So we're not, I guess this area is not very religious, at least to my perspective.
Just a moment. Just a moment.
Oh.
Yeah. Just a moment.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Fine. So you're fine now. Sorry for that.
So you can hear me okay? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So where are you from?
I'm from New England area.
New England. Okay.
Yeah.
And what is your background? Do you have any kind of background in
You know,
natural sciences or so? What is your knowledge
no.
in regards of biochemistry, biology, origins, whatever?
I am very lay person.
Okay. Okay. And you are an atheist.
Yes.
Okay. Why are you an atheist?
Well, that's a good question. I believe I've been an atheist my entire life. I was raised in technically a secular home, I guess you would say. We just weren't very religious. People, like I said, this area is, probably mostly Catholic, I would say. And Catholics aren't really, some are more religious than others. Some just kind of go with the flow, I guess you would say. It's not like, the Christians down south and the Baptists, and, there are those types of churches around here, but I mean, it's not.
Yeah, it's probably a mostly secularized community, or
Right. It's very
like
right.
It's like in Switzerland. I've been raised in Switzerland, and I was a Catholic too. And most of the population is secularized, hasn't a big interest in religion. It's mostly formal religion, Catholicism, Protestantism, and there is a small percentage of evangelical Christians. And I just came to believe when I was 18, when I received the Lord as my Savior and started with my trajectory as a Christian.
Right.
So again, what do you believe and why?
That's a tough question. What do I believe? There's a lot of things I believe. I mean, I don't believe in a God, if that's what you're asking me.
Yeah,
I mean, there's lots. I mean, I'm very, very scientific. I mean, I believe in the scientific methods. I guess that's a start.
Okay. So you believe that science and the scientific method leads to materialism?
Yes, yeah, I would say so. I guess I would consider. Honestly, Angelo, I've been watching you guys, and I've been interested in this whole group for quite a long time. And this is the first time I've ever actually spoken to anybody online or anybody in your group, and I've been watching for well over a year probably. So it's kind of funny. I just interested in the subject. I've been following a lot of you guys for quite some time, and I just enjoy listening to the debates and the back and forths, and it's just interesting to me. That's all.
So how has that time that you're listening to our group modified your views in regards of origins?
Actually, there's been a lot of people. I mean, like I said, I've listened to lots and lots and lots of debates. I think it's actually strengthened my conviction in a lot of ways because I listen to both sides. I mean, I hear the arguments, and I mean, my way of thinking is clearly different from a theist. I mean, it's just, you can just see it. I'm very open-minded, and I think atheists tend to be that way. Nothing's impossible. I certainly. I mean, in my opinion, sure, there could be a God. I think it's very unlikely. To me, I don't see any evidence that there's a God. But, there's a lot of unknown things, and anything's possible.
As I stated many times, Lori, upon my understanding, there are just two views. Either there is a God or there is not a God. And when you say that it is very unlikely that there is a God, then automatically, even if you are not aware of it, you are saying at the same time that it is very likely that there is just a material world. And when you endorse that view, you need to be able to justify and back it up. There has to be a burden of proof as well on the side of those that endorse a materialistic view of reality. And that is what I very rarely see. Atheists, they challenge theists and us to provide the burden of proof, and then they invest all their efforts to take it down. And in the end, they say, well, we just don't believe what you say. But that is, in my understanding, not an adequate epistemological approach. An atheist or a materialist, in order to be to justify his views that the material world is all there is, he needs to elaborate a positive framework which permits him to say, this is the evidence, and following the evidence, materialism or the no God hypothesis best and most adequately fits to the evidence.
Okay, that I would agree with that. All right, so let me ask you. This is my view. Okay, I look at science. Science is all we have. Okay, we have to investigate the world around us. We have to investigate reality. We have to investigate the natural world. And science is really the only way we have to do that. Or human beings. Human beings are out there. The whole entire planet is doing these things. Am I correct on that? Or do you agree with that?
This is also a very important point, Lori, which I see by many atheists. They have never elaborated a sophisticated or an adequate epistemological framework upon which to investigate origins. And scientism or verificationism or the requirement to provide objective or an objective demonstration of God's existence, this is a flawed approach, because we cannot demonstrate neither that there is a God nor that the material world is all there is. So what we can do is apply abductive reasoning to the best explanation. We can have a look at the natural world, what is, and then from what is, we can make an inference to the best explanation, to which explanation best fits the evidence. And that includes philosophy, science, and theology. I don't usually not start a dialogue with atheists talking about the Bible or God or theology or something like that. The first approach or the first question in a cumulative case is to ask, is there most likely a God, or is it most likely true that the material world is all there is? That is the first question. And when I come with an atheist to a common agreement or conclusion that probably God fits better the bill, then I go on and explain why I think that the God which I believe in, which is the Christian God, is the best explanation and the best answer.
Okay, so right there is where we part ways. I mean, I don't disagree with. I mean, maybe there is something else besides the material world. How you can find that out, I don't know. Just by abductive reasoning, I mean, I don't think it doesn't do anything for me. Like
I think logic. I think logic is logic and sound reasoning is very important, and I think what we have to investigate is what is intelligence capable to do, and what is non-intelligence capable to do, and what are the differences between what non-intelligence does and what intelligence does, and then we look into the natural world and check if there are signs or imprints or signatures which have the hallmark or of design of intelligent intervention in the past.
That makes sense. I don't disagree with that, but where I have a problem, I guess my biggest problem is making that huge leap. The God of the Bible, to me, is absolutely absurd. I mean, it just, the stories in it are just absolutely absurd. And the morality, all of the arguments, I've listened to all the stuff. And there's just no possible way I would make that leap.
Okay.
To the God of the Bible. There's just no possible way.
Oh yeah. That is something which I see very very often. When I go to a chat room of atheists and they discuss why they became atheists, in most cases, I would say maybe 90%, they will go down that line of reasoning. I was a Christian and I did read the Bible, and then I started to see discrepancies and difficulties and contradictions and things that sound absurd to me. And then they started a process of deconversion where they came to a point where they simply said, well, I can't believe this stuff anymore. And then they do not, as an alternative view, elaborate something that gives them a justification for materialism, but they just stop there and they become agnostic atheists. They are atheists because they do not believe anymore in a God, but at the same time they are agnostics because they have no beliefs anymore. They are just unbelievers. So they have no good reasoning to believe that the material world is all there is, because they have never investigated that alternative in a sophisticated manner.
Okay, so now, all right, so stop there. Now, how would you go about investigating from there? Eliminate the God of the Bible, because obviously that's out of the picture for me. I mean, I just wouldn't waste my time with that. So where
I
would
don't
you go
think it
other
makes
than the
sense.
God of the Bible? So
Laurie, I don't think
Okay.
it makes sense with an unbeliever as you are to
Hmm.
start to try to justify a specific God. It can be the God of the Bible or the God of any other religion. I think the first question which has to be asked, how can we explain reality? Why is there something rather than nothing? Why is life extant if it's so unlikely rather than not extant? Why are we here? Is there an intelligent, powerful creator, or is there just the material world? These are the two options.
There's the questions there. I don't ask those kind of questions. Those questions to me, when you're talking about those things, don't make sense to me. It's how. It's not why. It's how. How did these things get here? That's what science says. You don't. I mean, it's. You can ask why all you want, and it's like the little kid asking why. Well, the correct answer is never mind. Go to bed. It's
There are
that
two.
just
There are
doesn't do
science,
anything
Laurie
for me.
makes Laurie. Science makes
Yes.
two kind of questions. One is the operational science, which tries to understand how things work. They investigate something in molecular biochemistry, and they see a protein, and they will try to find out how does that protein work and what is its function. That is related to operational science, and based on that, we can make predictions and apply the scientific method and so forth. Now, historical sciences, they ask a different question. They ask, how did things come to exist? Like evolutionary biology, history, geology, paleontology, astrophysics, astronomy, all these kind of scientific investigations, they try to look back into the past and then to explain how did life develop, starting from the Big Bang and then going forth to the origin of life, evolutionary biology, and so forth. So these are different kind of questions.
Yes, I agree.
So again, the question is, if we take that there are two buckets, one is a worldview where there is no God and another worldview where there is a God. Now, you have to find out first what makes more sense. How can we explain our existence and origins better, in a better manner? What is the how is the evidence better adequately explained?
Well, I have a completely different view. Like I said, I mean, you look at the history of science and just all of what we have done to study the universe. Take a look at the universe. I mean, basically, it's not all perfect science, but we've got it all the way back to the Big Bang. I mean, we don't know what happened before that, of course. You can place your God there. I mean, I certainly think that, what's past the Big Bang, what created the Big Bang, if you want to place your God there, by all means. I mean, I wouldn't say that that's impossible. That's what makes most people agnostic, because we don't have all the answers. But
No, we don't have absolute answers. We don't have any answers in an absolute sense in regards of what there is beyond the universe. We do not have absolute answers in regards of the starting point of the universe. We do not have any answers in an absolute term whatsoever in regards of history, especially in regards of the of history of the living whatsoever. That's why I said we do not have to investigate and find answers that give us absolute answers or uh, uh, proofs, but we need to find out what is the most adequate answer. And I think it's important that as a starting point, we know how we investigate, what we investigate, and when we have set up a framework of epistemology, then the way to go is much is much better, and we have a better chance to come to meaningful and correct conclusions.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's just I believe all the theists. Like I've said, I've been listening to you guys for well over a year now. I mean, so many arguments, and I have a complete different way of looking at things than theists do. I mean, you guys just have it set in your head that God did it, and that's it, and you're not. You just have your mind made up, and then you look for something to fit that. That's exactly what you do, and all of you guys do that. You sit there and pick apart science. You look for any little thing, looking for design, looking for, oh, science can't prove this, so therefore my God, and that's what you all do.
Well, I disagree with you, Laurie, because I have a long list of syllogisms where I start with positive evidence, with a premise, with one or two premises which are positive evidence of things that we actually observe in the natural world. And from there, we go to a conclusion of what best explains the evidence seen in the natural world. And if you want to posit that a materialistic worldview is true, then you need to make that in the same way. You need to elaborate positive arguments which start with the premise, with the observation in the natural world, and then as a conclusion, you say, because of these premises, unguided random events, materialistic mechanisms explain the observation in a better manner than an intelligent designer. That is the way to go.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. I've listened to you talk many times, listened to a lot of your stuff, and your big thing is the origins of life. Am I correct there?
Well, I am investigating all arguments related to God's existence. That starts from the ontological argument, from the cosmological argument, from the argument of fine-tuning, for the argument of the origin of life, origin of biodiversity, origin of conscience, of the mind, of morality. There is a whole bunch of different arguments for God's existence. And all of those I investigate, but since I am a machine designer, my focus has always been the teleological argument, in special in regards of the origin of life, because what I have learned, which is as being a machine designer, is what has given me a background easy to understand what happens in molecular biology.
Okay, so I guess where I was trying to go with this is, now you believe your God is obviously outside of the natural world, correct?
Yes, God transcends the natural world. He's in another dimension.
So if you're searching, you're trying to prove your God, and
no, I'm not trying to prove my God. As I explained to you before, I do not have any proofs. While I'm absolutely convinced of my beliefs, I cannot tell you, Laurie, I can prove you God's existence. All I can do is give you good arguments, which I think point to a creator.
Right. Okay. I guess maybe that's where I have I can't figure out. To me, what I'm trying to think of is if you truly want to prove your God's existence, you need to figure out some way of investigating beyond the material, beyond the natural world.
Well, as I said, I cannot prove you God's existence. I cannot do that. Nobody has proofs, either on the one side nor at the other side. I cannot prove you the God which I believe in, and you cannot prove me that the material natural world is all there is and that there is nothing beyond that. We have no proofs in regards of ultimate reality.
That's correct. And that's why these arguments will never end. It'll just go on and on and on, because
that's why I said
I can never prove to you that it's the natural world that's all there is, and you can't prove the other way. So and we just have a disagreement, and which is okay. And I don't I don't have a problem with it. But
That's why it's important, Laurie. I see that all the time. Atheists in chat rooms, in Facebook groups, and so on. The first thing that they ask is, demonstrate me your God and I will believe. And that demonstrates that person has not started first with constructing a framework of investigation before actually starting the investigation. Because that question of proving God's existence can be deleted and cut out. It does not lead anywhere. That's not the way to go to find meaningful positions in regards of origins.
And there's the key word right there, is meaningful. I mean, I think that sums it up right there. You know, you're looking at, let's say, theists and atheists, obviously you look at the evidence when you're talking about all the natural sciences in the natural world and how you perceive reality. We see it in two different ways. You see it one way and I see it another way. And you see all these things, like I said, I've listened to you talk many times. You know, you look at these evidences in the natural world and you say that, you know, that's so complex. That's, you know, we have no answer for abiogenesis, and so, you know, there has to be a creator. So you see that in that way, and atheists don't see that. We look at the evidence and we don't see that. We don't see a creator there. So there's a huge difference. And you're looking for meaning, where I'm not looking for meaning in the natural world. I look for meaning within. Yeah, I mean, that's where you should be looking.
Well,
not within, not in the natural world.
Well, Laurie, we can ask about meaning once that we define that a creator most likely exists, because then we can ask what was the intent for him to make the physical world. But of course, if the material world is all there is, then you cannot ask about meaning, because there cannot be any meaning to it. So the first question is not what is the meaning. The first question is there a God or not?
That's a typical theist thing to say. That's a typical theist thing to say. What do you mean there can't be any meaning? That's offensive. I can't have any meaning in my life because I don't believe in your God? That's really offensive.
I see your point. I see your point, but I see it that way. If there is no God, Laurie, then from stardust we came, from stardust to stardust we go, and whatever happened in between in 10 or 100,000 years, when we are back to stardust, whatever we did will not be remembered.
Well, see, there's the difference. Now, like, let's go back to this whole thing about meaning. Now, that's what I see in theists. It's all about that comfort. You're looking for that little bit of comfort zone, or it makes you, you know, the whole thing about the afterlife is a comforting thing.
Laurie, what I am about is truth. Laurie,
yeah,
what I'm about is truth. What is the truth? What is the meaning of our existence? This is a question which we can ask if there is a creator, because then he had an intent why he made us, and then we can ask, why did you create humans, the physical world, and everything that we know exists?
Yeah, that makes sense. It absolutely. I can understand that, but I guess atheists just don't look for it that way. We look for meaning within.
Yeah, I think the first question is not to ask about meaning, but what is the truth? And the first question in regards to that is there most likely a creator, or is there most likely just a material world? And if your position is, Laurie, that most probably only the material world is what there is, then you need as much as good evidence as we are always required to give. And that is not just, well, because the Bible isn't true, then materialism must be true. That's not the way to go. You must start with positive observation, and from there you must say, because we observe this, therefore materialism explains our reality better.
See, that doesn't make any sense to me. I have to prove. I mean, I look around, and that's all there is. Well, all right.
Not proof.
Say that again. Say that what you just said.
Okay.
Ask that
You,
question again.
a materialist which is consistent with his beliefs, he needs to be able to observe through science, to observation what is, observe the evidence, start from there, and then say, because we observe this in the natural world, the best explanation, the one which tops theistic explanations, is a materialistic mechanism or explanation, because this and that. That is the way to go. You need to say, well, we look into cosmology, we look into the origin of life, we look into fine-tuning, we look into biodiversity, and because we are looking in all these kind of things, we see that materialistic mechanisms explain the feat observed in a better manner than an intelligent creator.
Yeah, that's correct. But we're also, I mean, you got to look at quantum physics. You know, there's quantum physics. There are things that happen in that domain that have no cause. So, you know, we're looking in those areas. I mean,
you are referring
where
to
else are you going to look?
Okay, you are referring to virtual particles.
Yes, I mean you have those kind of things. I mean, science is investigating that. Where else do you think we should look?
Okay, do you want to have a talk about virtual particles?
I mean, I'm a lay person when it comes to it. I don't know all that much about it, but I mean, if you think you understand quantum physics, then you don't understand quantum physics, and neither do I.
Well, you need to provide whatever you think that you understand in a consistent way to back up your position of materialism. It can be quantum physics or whatever else you think that you understand best, which backs up what you believe.
So back up my quantum, my materialism. I mean, I'm having a hard time understanding that. I mean, when I look around, that's all there is materialism.
Okay, what we observe,
I don't see any ghosts walking around. I don't. Where else? Yeah, what else is there other than that?
Laurie, there are two different questions. One thing is what is. We all agree that the material physical world is what is. But a different question is how did the material world and also the mental world come to be? What is its origin? That are different questions.
That's exactly right. And what is science doing? We're searching. I mean,
science has limited itself to methodological naturalism, where only natural mechanisms are permitted as an explanation in regards of operational science, which I think is okay, but it also has limited itself to material causes as an explanation which is admitted in regards to origins. And this is, in my understanding, a faulty approach, because science should permit to investigate all possible mechanisms, and intelligent design is as much a possible explanation as materialistic causes like evolution or abiogenesis by random chance or physical necessity or whatever you want to posit.
Okay, so I would agree with that. Let's say that the origins of life, intelligent design, is a possibility. Let's say that for the sake of argument. How are you going to prove that? How are you going to prove that?
We don't have to prove anything, as I said before.
You're just going to deposit it? I mean, you can't just deposit it, because that's just like an opinion.
Lord,
that's an opinion.
Yes, but it can be.
Opinions don't work.
Well, Lord, just a minute. Stop.
Okay,
stop.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
There are blind opinions based on blind faith, and there are informed opinions based on understanding what we observe in the natural world. And based on what we understand, we can come to informed conclusions, which are not proofs, but they are based on abductive reasoning to the best explanation.
I agree, but that will never work for abiogenesis. You just can't do it that way.
We cannot prove what happened when life started. You cannot prove that
How
abiogenesis
can you say
is.
that? You can't say that. You know, science takes hundreds of years in some cases. Yeah, you know,
The only way to prove what happened.
Let's talk about abiogenesis, and I'll explain to you how I see it. In the way, you know, obviously you see it completely different. Okay, the way I look at it is, we're trying to discover how things came. You look back at the beginning of the planet, right? You go back 4 billion years, and you have a planet that's forming. You got, you know, chemicals and all that. Why is it so difficult to figure out that maybe there was all kinds of you know, billions and billions of different experiments going on at that time, 4 billion years ago, on this planet? Billions and billions of different experiments, like a massive laboratory. That's what it was. And that's what scientists believe. Okay? So why is it so difficult to think that one of those experiments worked? And that's it. And that was the start of life. Why is that so difficult to contemplate?
Okay. First of all, we do not have a time machine to go back to see what happened. Do you agree with me?
I absolutely agree with that.
So we cannot prove neither that abiogenesis is true nor that special creation is
we
true.
can
Okay?
we can prove it if we can somehow figure it out in a laboratory, which scientists are trying to do. We can prove it. And that's what you're saying. You're saying we can't. And that's not science. Right there, you would make a terrible scientist, because you're saying we can't do it. So you might as well just stop. Why are we bothering doing any research on abiogenesis? If you have the answer, what's the point?
Well, what we could do is, if we would know the environmental conditions on the early Earth, if we would know that, which we don't, then we could make eventually a laboratory experiment and check if by natural means life would start without human intervention whatsoever. But we do not know what the environmental conditions were back then, so it falls short right there.
That's correct. And it may be absolutely impossible to do it on this planet, because there's life here, number one. So to try to be able to create life from non-life when the planet is full of life, it may be impossible. So, you know, now, and then the same thing is, you know, you said it's just so difficult. Like, it may not be even possible. I don't know.
Well, it is not possible because we cannot recreate. We do not know what the conditions on the early Earth was.
So,
period.
Now, I was going to ask a second question, a part of that. Now I just thought of it. Now, you were saying we don't know the conditions, and if we could figure it out, then we could create life. Well, what happens if we do? Then what are you going to say? If we actually figure it out?
I don't think we can figure it out, because we would need a time machine to go back. We can just elaborate hypotheses and work from there.
But that's not what you just said.
Okay.
You just said if we could figure out what it was like, then we could create it on here and now. Scientists could do it. That's what you just said. Right?
Well, but we can't know what happened on the early Earth in regards of the environment.
I disagree with that. I mean, we don't know what it is, but you can't say we can't know. I mean, scientists have a pretty good idea, but, you know, let's say, all right, let me ask you another question. Let's say, you know, we're doing all kinds of exploring space. What happens if we discover, you know, life on another planet, even if it's just bacteria or whatever? What happens if there's actual signs, which we're pretty close to doing right now? What happens then?
Well, the odds to have a life-hosting planet, and I can show you the science paper on this, the odds are 1 to 10 to the 122nd power. That is a chance less to find one specific atom in all the universe.
Say that again?
The odds to find a life-hosting planet with the conditions right to have life is 1 to 10 to the 122nd power. That
Okay.
is such a small chance that we can put it as negligible.
You know, those numbers mean nothing to me. I mean, those numbers may absolutely be true, but when you look out at the universe is so massive, you can't comprehend that. And, you know, rare things happen in this universe all the time. There's billions and billions and billions of chances out there. And we look out into the sky and all the things for life are all out there. And you think that it's important. You think that just because the odds are 1 in 10 into the 50th power that it can never happen.
No,
that's just ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I mean, you have no idea how big the universe is. Science doesn't know how big it is. We have a pretty good idea, but you listen to Alan Guth. If you ever listen to him talk, the universe is just massively bigger, according to his theories, than what general science thinks. So it's just, that's not science. You just say we can't find it. We're not going to find it because the chances. So you might as well, with that type of attitude, you might as well stop doing science, because you have the answers, and humanity wouldn't go anywhere if the scientific world had that type of an attitude. We wouldn't advance. We'd be still in the Stone Ages, because you have all the answers, or at least you think you did.
Well, what we know is what it takes to have a life hosting planet. If you want, I can put the paper on screen, and then you can see all the different things that are required. And this is evidence. This is not just something that I making up. This is science.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, I don't think it's necessary. I don't disagree with you, but I mean, the science and the things that I listen to, and it's my understanding that we're getting pretty close. I mean, if we can really look at the atmospheres of some of these planets, we may find life on them, or at least possible evidence of that. So what is the difference? I mean, it's probably never going to happen in our lifetime. That's just the way it is.
I call it, Laurie,
Yeah,
I call this materialism of the gaps. We do not know, but I think that science, with its advancement, will find an answer, and it will be a materialistic answer. That is a typical materialism of the gaps, and you posit that based on blind faith. We have supposedly gaps, and you think these will be filled with materialism. Now, the problem is that science is discovering that the conditions that need to be right to have life, they have now 360 different constants which must be just right. And this is a huge number of conditions which demonstrate that the chance to have a life-hosting universe and planet the odds are huge. They are huge. So how do you explain that? Do you think it was a lucky accident?
I don't know. I don't know where you get your information, but the information.
Yeah, it's on the screen. It's on the screen, and
I have to look at it.
I can open.
Can't see it good, but that's
just
okay.
a moment.
That's okay. I mean, it's okay. You don't have to. I mean, I'd rather just have a conversation. I don't need to read all your. I don't doubt your. I don't doubt your. Your investigations and things like that. I mean, sometimes you guys go on to these creationist sites and get your information. And
no. I have most of my information, Laurie, from secular peer-reviewed science papers, and not from creationist sites.
I know you're a very, very honest person. Like I said, I've watched a lot of things that you've done. I definitely don't disagree with that. You're a very honest person, and that's why I'm here talking to you. I think, I made a comment, or you probably didn't see the comment. I watched you. You had your conversation the other day with Speed of Sound, and I thought that was good. I was listening to your conversation. I thought that was a great conversation. I I loved it how you actually said that you had a problem with the whole thing with Smokey Saint, and you made a comment of the guys saying nasty things, and I wrote a comment about that and speak. I don't know if you saw that or not, but I wrote a comment. I applauded you for doing that, because my emotions get high just like everybody else's, and it's you really have to control yourself and not say bad things about the person. It's not about the person. It's about communicating, discussing the ideas, and things like that. It's not.
That's why I set
shouldn't be
a
putting
rule.
each other down.
Yes, that's why I set the rule at my channel that name calling and so forth and ad-homs. I don't want that. I want just conversations as we are having now.
Yeah. So I don't doubt. I mean, so let's get back to what we were just talking about as far as the universe is concerned. I mean, like I said, we're on this planet for 70 or 80 years if you're lucky, and you're only going to learn so much. Science takes a long time, and they may discover a possible planet out there. To my understanding is we're pretty close to that. We're developing, we're sending up these new telescopes, and they may spot something that has oxygen in its atmosphere. Well, what are you going to do with that? Where did that come from? To me, that's scientists are pretty confident about that. And you throw up these numbers. I mean, I can't argue with them, because I haven't put any major study into this. So, but from my understanding, scientists are pretty confident.
Okay. Do you know how oxygen is formed in our atmosphere, Laurie?
I mean, as far as I know, through plants.
Yes, and what is the mechanism that plants use to produce oxygen?
Through the sun, whatever. I like I said, I'm not a scientist. I have a pretty good idea, but I couldn't explain it to you very well.
Okay, it's photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis, yes, that's good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Photosynthesis, I have taken a great deal of time to study it. I have a video on my other channel, Intelligent Design Academy. I can link to it afterwards. After our chat, you can have a look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
And photosynthesis basically kills evolution.
Okay.
And if you don't have evolution, you have no materialistic explanation of biodiversity on Earth.
Yeah. I don't know if the science would agree with that, but I mean, maybe you look that up, and I don't know.
No, I recommend that
I don't understand it as well. I admire you for all the studying that you've done. I truly admire. A lot of you guys have put tremendous study into this stuff, far more than I have, obviously, and I admire all you guys for doing what you do. But it's just my understanding of science is, I don't think it's that difficult. I just really don't. I really think that's a very strong possibility that, in the next 10 or 20 years, they're going to spot some oxygen around the planet, and they're going to say, holy shit. And I'm hoping that's going to happen in my lifetime. That's what I hope for, things like that. Some big breakthroughs, and, the abiogenesis thing. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I never put any great study into any of that. So.
Well, oxygen, Laurie, is produced through the oxygen evolving complex in photosynthesis, where water is splitted into hydrogen and oxygen. And the mechanism is not fully understood, but what we do know is that the proteins required, there are at least 3 or 4 proteins and a cofactor which splits the water. And the make of the cofactor is a metal cofactor using molybdenum. It's extremely complex. Science has no clue how it could have evolved. The proteins have individually no function. They only work together to split water. And this is clear evidence. Science has no explanation of how oxygenic photosynthesis evolved. And this is evidence, very clear evidence, that it was designed. Now, I recommend that you watch my video on photosynthesis because I explain it in a very deductive manner that any layperson, as you can understand, and there you will see why the process of making photosynthesis cannot be explained by evolutionary manner. I very much recommend it to you.
That would be interesting. I've never heard that really talked about too much. I've never looked into any of that. I'm sure that would be interesting, but
okay. So I have about 4 or 5 people in the chat which want to come in and talk. I will just link to the video so you can have watch it afterwards, and then you can have a chat with all other people, and I will just watch you guys talk. Is that okay?
Yeah. It looks like am I looking at a lot of people chomping at the bit to get a hold of me? Is that? It seemed that way. I wasn't really watching the chat. I was watching the chat a little bit, but
well, it's up to you. If you want,
love it.
You can
that's
have
fine. But
if
everybody's going to be respectful, and like I said, I'm a layperson. Some of these people have really done some great study on some of the things that they do, and I admire that. I think that's great. But if anybody's going to be nasty, then I'll just leave.
No, feel free. You can do whatever you want. If someone is harassing you, you report to me, and I will watch it afterwards and take action. But anyway, I think I am giving you some food for thought.
Yes,
okay?
Yes. Thank you so much, Ontario. It was very nice talking to you.
Yeah, and you are always welcome to lurk around here, and we can anytime have a continuation of our conversation.
Thank
okay.
You. Thank you so much.
I will put all the people here in, and then you can talk to them. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Talk to you another time. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Good morning, Laurie.
Hello. How are you? Who am I talking to?
George Bond.
Let me hold on. Let me change my screen.
Hey, George. Hey, Tony.
Hi, Laurie.
I'll just.
What do we got? We got a whole room full of people here now. Okay.
Yeah, Laurie. I'll be short and sweet.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Look, I had the same issues that you've mentioned, but I actually researched them. A little bit about myself. Okay, I'm an engineer and I use applied science. A couple of things you said about the molten Earth 4 billion years ago. Did you know, and this is a fact that can be verified in the scientific lab, granite, when it's molten and allowed to cool, actually forms into a substance, another rock called rhyolite. And if the Earth was a molten ball of rock 4 billion years ago, why is the Earth still full of granite? That's number one. Number two, the heavier elements, the radioactive elements, if they were in a molten ball of rock, they would be evenly be distributed around the Earth over so many millions and millions of years. However, what we do find, 90% of the radioactivity on Earth is found on the land continents. And that can't be. So there are two contradictions, scientific contradictions, that I looked at, because I looked at those same things you mentioned about the contradictions in the Bible. I actually bought books on it and I read on it, and there are no contradictions. I looked at the immorality part of what you mentioned of God being a megalomaniac. I find it unbelievable that atheists will say, why is there evil in the world? Why doesn't God do something about evil? And when he does something about evil, atheists call him a megalomaniac. Okay, they're the points I want to make. I don't want to take too much time. There are other people that want to have a discussion as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Hey, Laurie.
Hi.
Hey, man. We were chatting about abiogenesis.
This Tony?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I can see your avatar working. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. just to clear it up, to take it, I'm not against abiogenesis research. The problem is what they've been showing in the past 70 years is that this research is highly manipulated and contrived. So when you say, well, one day they may produce life in the lab, that's possible. The problem is that the conditions and the techniques that they're using don't relate to the natural world. So a lot of these experiments turn out to be highly flawed. And I have a video discussing this with PhD chemist James Torr. I could send you that link, and he's pretty much an expert in the field. So, and a lot of these chemists are saying this, that these conditions just aren't working under, natural chemistry.
I don't doubt that. I certainly don't doubt that. The way I look at it is, I don't know. We just haven't figured out, exactly the exact experiment. Okay, that's the way I look at it. Number one. Number two, you say they're contrived. Well, how else are you going to do it? A scientist has to do it, which means they have to do the experiment. And they have to manipulate it somehow to make it so it goes from non-life to life somehow, some way. So I don't understand your objection on that.
My objection is not, I said it before, I'm not objecting to an intelligent chemist being there. Yes, of course, they have to set up the experiment. They have to use flask and sterile test tubes. Yes, that's all fine. And they have to put in the test tube the chemicals. That's fine.
That's
what
right.
I'm objecting, right. The problem is, and what a lot of chemists are objecting to, is the way these experiments are run and the chemicals in the concentrations that they're putting into the experiment and the stopping and starting of the experiment, removing impurities at certain steps, putting into the experiment, isolating chemicals, adding them at the certain step. So that's what makes an experiment contrived.
Well, I get that. But I'm not really sure if there's any other possible way to do it. To me, that's not impossible in early Earth. Chemicals could be introduced at different times, at different temperatures, at different pressures. This the way I look at it is, early Earth could have had 1 billion different experiments going on the planet at the same time. Billions upon billions. We don't know that. We don't have the answer to that, correct? So, and one of those experiments that's been going on worked. And that's the bottom line. And, we have to find that one experiment out of billions upon billions. And how long do you think it could take scientists to do that? That's the thing. It could be billions, and it might take scientists billions and billions of tries to do it.
Well,
Laurie, why do we have a planet full of granite?
That's a geology question. I've never looked into any of that. I have no idea. You'd have to get a geologist to explain that. Neither
am I, Laurie. But I'm an engineer, and I can tell you, in the laboratory, they have shown that when granite is molten and allowed to cool, it forms rhyolite. The predominant composition of all the land continents is granite, so there shouldn't be any granite at all on Earth if it was a molten ball of rock.
Well, that's the thing. Maybe science doesn't know exactly. I don't know. I'd have to look into something like that. I don't know if the planet was molten. As far as science says, I believe it was. Now, this planet is churning. It's moving all around. So none of that.
So you choose to believe science when they tell you it's a molten ball of rock, but then you dismiss science when it shows that a molten granite, when allowed to cool, will form rhyolite. Why are you choosing that contradiction to choose one, but to believe one and not the other?
No, that's a typical theist comment. I'm not Science is all I have. How else am I supposed to go out and do the experiments myself? Or, I can go out and study the science myself like you did.
Well,
and
Lori, you do.
And draw my own, wait a minute, let me finish. I can go out and study the science like you did and draw my own conclusions. And maybe I may come up with the same conclusion as you. Okay. But science is all I have. And I hear theists always say that, you just believe what scientists say. Well, no, I don't know.
I said science. I didn't say scientists. I said science. Science. Science says that the Earth was a molten ball of rock. Science has also shown that granite, when molten and allowed to cool, forms rhyolite. Science said that, not the scientists. They did it via experiments, but they can't go back. Science can't say 4.5 billion years ago that the Earth was molten. They tell you that, and they say science shows it. It doesn't. It's scientists that say it, but then the science shows that molten granite, when allowed to cool, forms rhyolite. Complete contradiction. So you were talking about contradictions in the Bible. Well, here's a complete contradiction in science.
Okay, just as a layperson, okay, now you're talking about, science says, all right, let's take this as a hypothetical. You have a big ball in space, it's molten rock or molten whatever. Okay, it's forming. Now, it gathers more and more material, more and more dust, and it covers that molten activity up. And that creates the crust after the fact. It's not the molten rock that turns into the granite. Like I can easily say, I don't understand all the science. You'd have to study all that. But maybe there is some contradictions in science. That just means that we don't have all the answers. That just doesn't prove anything.
Laurie, that's a hypothetical, but let's look at the logic of that. You're saying this additional material came from outer space, and it just happened that it just landed where all the continents are. It's a big Earth.
No. The Earth is churning all the time. The Earth and the crust is churning up and down. It's going all over the place. It doesn't just land where the continents are. That's crap.
But why do we find all the granite in the continents?
Like I said, I don't know all the science. I can't give you all the answers, but I don't know. Like I said, the Earth is churning all the time. It's
okay, Laurie. I'll let someone else talk.
I don't have the answers to that. I'm not a scientist. I don't know.
Well, Laurie, I can tell you in the origin of life field, these chemists are failing. When you say it may take billions of years to show this, even in the lab, they're showing that even with the billions of years, they can't even get a protein to form. There's
that's just a bold ass statement. It's actually not. True. That's just your opinion. That's not my opinion. That's just what Tangelo just said earlier.
That's not my opinion. They can't get any of these functional proteins to form from amino acids. That's not my opinion.
But you're saying that that we can't do it. It's impossible to do it
under natural conditions, right?
That's not science. When you say, so what's the... Okay, so let me ask you, Tony, we discussed this. So why should we even bother doing abiogenesis then?
There's a lot of funding behind it. So, of course, chemists are going to keep doing the experiments.
And you're saying they're just doing it for money? Come on.
A lot of them are, yeah. A lot of them are not making progress.
That's not conspiracy theories. Come on.
No, they're not. Then why aren't they producing life if it's so successful?
Now you're changing it. That's not what we.
No, I'm not. If it's so successful, why are prebiotic conditions failing?
You're changing what we were just discussing. We were just saying that they're doing it because of the money.
Oh, a lot of them are. They put out false statements. Are you aware of the research that's been going on?
No, I have.
Okay, well, I'll give you one example.
I don't study all this stuff.
All right, fair enough.
I don't deny you guys' research. I don't.
Okay, I will give you one example. Okay, I'll give
applaud
you one.
for what you do.
I'll give you one example of dishonesty. I'll give you one example of dishonesty in the origin of life field. Jack Shostak is a current researcher. He put out a paper on self-replicating RNA, and he actually retracted it because it does not function and work under early Earth conditions. So there is research.
Okay, good.
There is research being done,
Yeah.
and chemists are actually retracting their work because it does not work under early Earth conditions. In fact, there's a $10 million prize right now for anyone by Perry Marshall that can produce life from non-life under natural processes without an intelligent chemist interfering at every step of the experiment. So
Okay,
these are
that's all well and good, but that doesn't.
Well, I'm not making things up.
I'm not doubting that at all. I don't doubt that at all, Tony. Like I said, I applaud you for all the research and the things that you do, but a couple of scientists retracting some things and saying, well, we have this research, but it will not work in early Earth. Well, what does that tell you? That doesn't tell me anything. That just tells me, okay, we haven't found anything yet. And
I would say
it's going to take, that proves my point, Tony, is the fact that it may take billions upon billions upon billions of experiments to find the correct way to do it. That just proves it. My point there.
No, I would say you have high hopes for something, but we have beaten parts of that theory to death. As far as protein,
I don't have high hopes. I mean,
okay, well,
you have high hopes that they won't do it, Tony.
I hope no. Protein sequencing.
Let me explain something. Okay, I could care less if they prove, abiogenesis. That means nothing to me. Okay, but it means a lot to you because you would love it that they don't, because that just continues the fact that you have that little niche to say, okay, my God is right there. My God could have done it. And that's total bias. I just see the major bias in your thinking, in the way you look at evidence and things like that. It's just,
no, I think it's exactly what we observe. Okay, could a computer ever program itself?
Oh, so we're gonna go to this.
Yeah, because that's what DNA and proteins are, and this proves my point.
We can.
Could you design a code without a designer? Could you design a code without a designer? Yeah.
Tony.
Go ahead.
Wait a minute. Now you're starting to get a little arrogant. Now, come on.
No, it's basic logic.
Let's.
Could a code design itself?
Okay. All right. Listen.
Is DNA a code? Yes or no?
Not in the way you're talking about it. No.
Okay, then where has a code ever formed from just a mixture of chemicals?
All right. Well, you know what?
I mean, I'm not trying to argue. It's just a valid question.
I understand. It's a very complicated subject, and it's a difficult way to it's a difficult thing to argue, no doubt. But there's no question that you yourself and many of your group, you look at DNA as a computer code.
That's what it is.
It's not. Scientists will disagree with you. So
they don't. No, they're actually calling it code.
I don't disagree that they're calling it code, Tony. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. But they're not calling it a computer code.
That's exactly how it reads.
There you go. What did you just say?
That's exactly what code is. That's how it reads. Yes.
A scientist calling it a computer code. Are they calling it a computer code?
Yeah, PhD chemist James Torr calls it code. Yes.
No, that's not what I asked you. I said, is he calling it computer code?
It reads just like computer tape code. Richard Dawkins is on camera saying it.
I don't disagree with that, Tony. I don't.
Well, then what are you asking me then?
Well, but the thing of it is you keep saying that scientists are calling it computer code.
Yeah, they are. Richard Dawkins even says it reads just like code. And he's on video saying it.
Keep saying that. You keep saying that.
Yeah, because he said it.
It reads just like.
Right. So, okay, tell me how it isn't. Tell us all how it isn't code.
They are similar. No question about it.
Okay, so then how would a code form without a coder?
Oh, naturally.
What? One step. one step further, Laurie, do you know anything about algorithms?
Very little, but go ahead.
Okay, well, I've done a postgrad in computer science. Algorithms, if I'll just simplify it for you, they're decision matrices. They are like if, then, else, do this or do that. There are literally, they are finding millions of these algorithms in the genome. One such algorithm is called the editase. What the editase does, runs up and down the DNA strand. I'm trying to simplify this for you. Up and down the DNA strand, it identifies any errors it finds, and then it sends a little message for someone else to come in and repair it. That's an algorithm. DNA is a programming code. It's got all these molecular little machines in there that do things based on decisions. For example, that non-coding region that
doubt any of that. I certainly don't doubt any of that.
Okay, so
the human body is basically a machine. But
yes, but wait.
But
algorithm.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm just going to finish off. Algorithms require foresight. Someone has to make those decisions, the if, then, else decisions. That's foresight. Foresight can't happen purely on based on chemicals, as Tony was saying. It requires a designer to have that foresight to make it happen.
I mean, I completely disagree with you. And, I know you guys have heard this. Wait a minute. Let me finish. I know you guys have heard this 1,000 times. And science disagrees with you. The way I look at it, let me explain. The human body is a machine. There's no question about it. But, you see humans being born every day, and we're just like machines. And that's, you have to communicate. We all communicate. I don't know any better way to explain it, but that's just, I don't know.
Well, Laurie, science does not disagree with us. Plenty of chemists do not agree with abiogenesis. The research is actually failing. And I'll ask you again, how do you get a code without a coder?
Like I said, Tony, I don't see it as a code like you see it. It's just, it does transfer. It behaves like a code. It behaves like a code. It looks like a code. Let me put it this way. This is probably a stupid and very simple way of putting it. But if I took a person and I dressed them in a duck suit, okay, and they're walking around like a duck. They're walking like a duck and they're quacking like a duck. Well, does that make it a duck? No. It looks like a duck and it's acting like a duck, but it's not a duck. And that's the way I look at it with DNA. It does transfer information. There's no question about it. But can you take DNA and stick it in your hard drive and have it read, the computer code, or can you do that?
Oh,
they're doing that research right now.
Yeah.
So you can take a little bit of DNA, take a little blood or something right out of my body, and just stick it in your computer, and it's computer code. You should be able to read it, correct?
Well, it's that a million times more complex. A cell is more complex than all the computers in the world combined.
So how do you know it's that's ridiculous. I mean, damn right that they're different. It's not the same thing. One is biological, one is mechanical, one is a mechanical. It's a mechanical machine. I mean, your body, the human body, and all life on Earth performs like machines, but that doesn't make them machines just because they perform that way.
Oh, they are machines without a doubt. Just like the first computer didn't arise by natural processes. It took teams of engineers.
That's correct. I don't disagree with that.
Right. So it's about 1 million times worse for a cell. We have no natural chemical pathways for these so-called primitive cells. And when you say that they may have to run these experiments for billions of years, first of all, that's a faith statement.
No, wait a minute. I didn't say billions of years. I said billions of times. It could take billions and billions of different experiments. And
Right.
I don't know how long that would take. I'm not saying it could take billions of years. So
Well, there's a lot of
don't put
uncertainty.
words in my mouth. And
Okay.
let's be
I agree.
honest. I mean, I'm trying to be completely honest and complete, with you. But this is the whole question back a little bit ago. When we were talking about, do scientists call it a computer code, and you wouldn't directly answer that.
Oh yes, plenty
let's
do.
Be honest.
Yes, a lot do. I've spoken to them.
I'm sure some do. There may be
Yeah,
some that refer to
yeah.
it that way, and there are plenty of scientists out there that have the strong belief like you do. I don't doubt that. There's no
Well, it
question
depends
about that, but
what science you're talking to. Like, for example, the chemists do. I've spoken to dozens of chemists that do refer to DNA as code, without a doubt, PhD level.
I don't know. I've never seen anybody
All right. Well, I
say
could send you a video.
It's a computer code. I've heard many of them say it. It looks like one. It behaves like one. I've heard that, but I've never heard anybody call it a computer code. And there's a difference there. So that was my point. That's all. And my point is,
Holy Trinity, do you want to say something? Hello, Holy Trinity.
I think fell asleep.
Maybe. Laurie,
What do you
mentioned
think of Ontario's on Angelo's webpage here? This is brand new. He just started this today, I think.
I'm not
This
sure.
this live thing he's got going here for everybody to.
Oh no, he's been doing live stuff for a few months now, I think.
No, I know that, but I mean he's gonna like lead this up like 24 hours or something. Is that I see in this? This is like new, right? Him doing this, or
I'm not sure what you're trying to say.
well, he's like setting us up that he wants to leave this like 24 hours or something.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, he probably has something to do, and he's left the actual stream and let us talk.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
Laurie,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I could send you some videos before you make up your mind on abiogenesis. Watch a couple of these videos, and we can come back and talk.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've watched a lot of stuff. I've listened to you guys talk many, many times, and it's an interesting subject. I have my point of view. You guys have yours.
Laurie, can I ask you?
Yeah.
And most people find this hard to answer. If you're looking for evidence, what kind of evidence are you looking for to convince you?
I hear that question. We've been discussing a lot of different topics today or tonight. And obviously you hear the same questions asked. I'll ask you guys the same, or an atheist will ask the same questions to a theist. A theist will ask the same type of questions. That is the same type of question that you hear from theists. And basically you're asking me, what would it take to convince me? Am I correct? Is that what you're trying to ask?
Well, yes, and I'll give you an example. Every code that you can think of that we know of has an intelligent designer behind it. Yet DNA is recognized as a code, yet the atheist will say, no, there must be a natural explanation to it. So that's science saying to you that, hey, every code that we know of has been developed by us, yet the DNA code is not designed by some intelligent person. Whether it's a god or an alien, forget about that. It must come from some intelligent source. The first point you have to grapple with is DNA. It's a code, and it requires intelligence to actually create it, to generate it. Whether it's Yahweh, the God of the Bible, or Allah, or whoever, is a different question. First of all, you have to decide, yes, it's a code and it requires an intelligent source. If it's not, then show us how you can generate a code purely by randomly mixing chemicals together.
See, that's the thing. It was right back to what we were just discussing a little while ago. I mean, I don't see it as a code like you see it. There lies the problem there. And
But
you know, you
scientists do see it as a code.
I don't disagree with that, but it's just. Let me try to explain it the way I see it.
Laurie, it's a
Yep.
quaternary code that even we are at the moment doing research on to find out how it works, so we can actually create more efficient and faster computers. They're currently working on quantum computers and DNA storage to go to the next level, because we've gone as far as we can go with computers. Because the faster you go, the more heat is generated. The more heat is generated, the components just won't work at those temperatures. So they're looking at different ways to improve that supercomputing power we need to be able to do some of the complex stuff that we can't do at the moment with the current ones.
Yeah. I don't doubt that. Like I said, the type of research that you guys do is very impressive. You know, I give you guys that. But like I said, I mean, my understanding of science is mathematics is the language of the universe. Basically, if you talk to a physicist, that's what they say. And can you explain? Can you explain that? You know,
Well,
is that your God? Maybe that is.
Lori,
I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. Lori, I would invite you to listen to, Smokey Saints channel. Lori,
I listen to him all the time.
Awesome.
And
Listen,
I'm
listen,
sorry.
man.
I'm sorry to say, Anthony, I'm really disgusted. I've been following all the drama
right.
that's been going on, and
I know. Well,
it's awful. It's absolutely awful. I'd like to have, I'd like to see you guys have conversations like this, and no doubt you guys do. You have lots of good conversations, but Smokey
okay,
is just way over the top. And hey, let me tell you a story, Tony. You'll be interested in this. Okay. Like I said, I've been involved or been listening to you guys and, a lot of the stuff for quite some time, a long time. And Smokey Saint actually really intrigued me. That's how I kind of like followed into you guys' group. It just so happened I stumbled on something. It was maybe on his channel or something. I listened to him for a few minutes and I'm like, wow, this guy's an interesting character. I like him. I agree with a lot of things that he had said. He went on a long diatribe of whatever he was talking about at the time. And I was like, wow, he seems like a good guy and very interesting character. So I started following him and all of you guys, a lot of that whole group. And, I try to follow a lot of different people because there's so many different people in the community. Obviously, I am on the atheist side, so I follow those guys too. And but all the stuff that goes on with Smokey now and the way his behavior and that whole thing with Jen and all that was just absolutely awful. I mean, terrible. So anyway, I just wanted to tell you that story.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there with Rage. I just wanted to tell you on the 17th, we're going to have a discussion with a particle physicist, and he's actually a Christian. So we're going to be talking about, the origin of the universe and some of the multiverse problems. If you wanted to listen.
Oh wow, that's my favorite stuff. I love, I love cosmology and astrophysics and physics. Believe it or not, that's how I actually got into this stuff. I'll try to do a quick story. I'm just basically a YouTuber. I just watch a lot of videos on YouTube, and I started doing stuff with physicists because I just love that type of stuff, cosmology, and listen to a lot of physicists lectures and things like that, which interests me. And there's so much of the God question goes into that. The top physicists in the world, everybody asks them those questions, and then I said, wow, that became an interesting subject, and that's how it threw me into this kind of stuff.
Do you read any scientific papers on the subjects, Laurie?
No. I like to listen to science lectures. I like to,
Okay, well, I'll just let you in on a few things. The genome, the ENCODE project, at the moment are doing a multi-billion-dollar study on they call it the 4D nucleome. What they're doing, they're studying the DNA from a 4-dimensional perspective because they found various proteins, when they fold over each other, they actually create pathways for different information. And that's why they're looking into it to see how that dimensional aspect, what that does, because they're trying to work out what this non-coding region actually does. Most people consider that as just junk DNA or predominantly junk, when in fact they've just recently found, or as of about 5 or 6 years ago, that non-coding region has, one science paper said, over 4 million on-off switches. Another article I read said over 8 million on-off switches. And they're trying to decide, and it's going to take a while, what all these on-off switches actually do. And that's why we're saying there's no such thing as junk DNA. It all has some purpose. We just don't know what it is. And that's what these studies are trying to determine. There's a wealth of information there that we don't know. But based on the very little that we know, the evolutionists will tell you it evolved. Just purely evolved.
Yeah.
It can't on-off.
I don't disagree with anything of that. Like, you know, it is a mystery. There's no question it's a mystery. And one thing that you brought up that I'm a little interested in is you're talking about quantum computers. And I find that very fascinating. If we could actually develop a quantum computer, could possibly answer a lot of these questions that you're talking about right now. You know, wouldn't that be fantastic?
Exactly, they're doing that at the moment. All quantum computers is that it allows parallel computations to occur. More parallel computations to occur than we are limited to today with the current technology. So if you can do more computations at the same time, you effectively speed up the process of whatever you're trying to do.
That's right. And there lies my point that we were talking about earlier is, you know, when you're talking about abiogenesis, maybe a quantum computer, like I said, maybe it's going to take billions upon billions of experiments to be able to figure that out. And a quantum computer could possibly help us with that because it takes billions and billions of different experiments, and a quantum computer can do so many of those calculations or computations. You know, maybe that's where the answer is.
The one problem.
I don't know. Yeah. Sorry, Tony. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. The one problem with that, when you say that there's all these environments and all these chemicals are reacting, the main problem is, even if you have the whole world raining, the whole universe, the whole planet covered in amino acids and nucleotides and all the life-friendly molecules, they don't generate genetic code. I had a big discussion with this with a PhD chemist. I can send you the video. Please watch it and get back to us. But I've heard that argument too, that, well, maybe it's just this chemical reaction or maybe it's that chemical reaction, and the whole earth could be covered in these chemicals. And it just doesn't go in that life-friendly direction, Lori. And there's a lot.
You may be absolutely right. I don't disagree. What I'm saying is, it's easy for me to
the naturalistic approach.
It's easy to think that this is a possibility, but I can't disagree with what you're saying, Tony. I truly can't.
Okay, fair enough, man.
It really is. I mean, it would be interesting. I'd love to have all the answers. Absolutely. And I honestly, I really think that science does too. And I think a lot of times the creationist community tends to misrepresent science when it comes to those kind of things, because they are searching for the truth. And a lot of guys try to say, well, they're all atheists and they're biased. Science is set up to eliminate that. With
Absolutely.
all the peer review, but yet you guys like to use that as a weapon. And I would just have to say I disagree with that, and I'm sure you know, a lot of theists will disagree with that too. So,
Well, notice tonight, as we haven't brought up the Bible, we haven't brought up religion. I mean, we can talk just science, whatever the topic. We don't have any trouble with that, you know.
right. This is, like I said, you know, I've never ever got online and talked to anybody. When I hear an interesting story, the only person I actually got online to talk to is Doc Dawkins. Imagine that.
Yeah.
I'm sure you heard of him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Laurie,
I mean, I just got myself set up. I've been thinking about going on Discord and having some conversations. But like I said, I've been following all of you guys, and it's just very interesting. I listen to all the debates. I watch modern day debate, and I try to catch as many debates as I can, a lot of them. And tons. Like I said, I watch Smokey's channel a lot. I follow a lot of people, but there's so many people in this community, you can't keep up with them all.
Laurie, if science is the search for truth, why are there so many examples of evolutionists bringing in? I'm trying to find the right word here. Frauds to prove their theory, and I'm sure you've heard about all the frauds.
What do you mean by forwards? Like, explain that a little better. Explain your question.
Frauds.
Oh, I'm sorry. The frauds.
Sorry, it's my Australian accent.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. I don't know. I'm not aware of it. I mean, I don't go searching for those kind of things. I don't search out frauds. There's a lot of dishonest people in this world. Okay, you're going to see that in everything. You see that in, the religious community, and you see that in the secular community. So of course, all the science, you have every breed of every person. So it could be money.
These are scientists searching for the truth.
Well, but they're also people. They are people, and people do dishonest things. And like we were talking about earlier, like Tony was saying, it could be money. He didn't really care if that particular scientist or the scientist you're talking about may, not give two shits about the truth. They were just out for the money. Maybe they just wanted the grants and they didn't care. That's a possibility, correct?
Well, I'm sure that happens. There's an actual site on the web, a website where they published retracted papers, and there are lots and lots of them where scientists have actually fudged the results, if you like, to further their own pockets. And it's becoming a joke. The science is becoming a joke because of these people.
And that's exactly what's going on in the world of protein synthesis, which is what I was saying in the RNA world. They'll print these papers and then they'll retract them a few months later because they finally realize, wait a minute, this stuff didn't form naturally. We engineered it. We rigged it to work. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and there you go. Like I said, scientists are people, and there's going to be that. But I think the majority of scientists are honest people and are looking for the truth. I mean, you can't deny that.
No, I don't deny that. My daughter's a scientist.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I said, it's a lot of it is probably money. It's easy to come by lots and lots of money nowadays. You could be talking millions and millions of dollars, and these scientists could hide some of those millions of dollars that they receive. I mean, look at how much fraud you see of, scientists taking the money that's been, a scientific grant and spending it on themselves. Those things happen too. So unfortunately, it's, we're just people on this planet, and that's the way it is.
So Tony, in terms of these iterations, these billions and billions of iterations, when would you say they should say, well, we've tried everything we can and we can't go any further. therefore, an intelligent designer must have been involved in this process. Because what I see is, if you just keep saying, "Oh, we just haven't found the how it actually happened," we just have to keep trying. You will never get to the position where you admit there was an intelligent source behind it. You'll just keep
Right.
saying, and
Yeah.
I keep hearing this excuse over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Atheists will readily say, "We don't know, but there must have been a naturalistic process involved."
That's fine. They can say that. You know, again, a lot of them have very high hopes that this environment's going to be shown. It has not been shown, but they can hold to that hypothesis. That's fine.
That's
I've talked to
correct,
plenty.
Tony. That's why I keep saying they
Yeah, I mean,
accuse
that's
us
fine.
of God did it, but nature did it
In
is the same
is
thing.
the same sort of thing. Yeah, I agree. In my world, the chemistry world, I've talked to plenty of chemists that said that the chemistry is dead. It's not working. But again, there's pressure from grant money. There's pressure from their colleagues. There's pressure to just continue this research. That's fine. Is it making progress? The short answer is no.
Tell me what you think about this. I've had this discussion with a few evolutionists / atheists about peer-reviewed papers, and I actually say to them, look, to really cut down on this fraud, don't publish the paper until some independent person has actually done the experiment themselves and verified the results.
Right.
In other words, that they must empirically prove what the paper is actually saying by actually duplicating the experiment themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And they will run experiments in different ways to see if they can get similar results. But, again, a lot of experiments fail, and there is fraud in the origin of life field. My whole discussion with James Tour goes into that. That's on Smokey's channel, if anybody wanted to watch it again. But, I mean, yeah, I agree. There's a lot of problems.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of problems with the entire secular science, but most people will just hand wave them away and say, well, we just haven't found the answer yet. Like that molten planet that cooled down. I mean, that's just one piece of evidence where granite, when molten and allowed to cool, forms rhyolite. So we shouldn't have any granite at all on the planet.
Yeah, I'm not a geologist, but yeah, I've heard that.
Well, I can give you lots of other geological evidences, like the erosion. Erosion really is another nail in the coffin, really, and it's really secular geologists that have determined these figures based on average erosion rates. They calculate, and a number of them have actually verified this as well. They verified that based on average erosion rates, the entire landscape on Earth should be eroded down to sea level within 10 to 12 million years. 10 to 12 million years. Imagine that. So you've got to ask, why do we still have all this landscape? You look at places like the Grand Canyon. You look at all the sharp edges on the cliffs. I mean, if it's been around for millions of years, those edges should have rounded off. There's so much evidence out there, but it's hand waved away. They won't accept it. They just think that there must be a millions and millions of years explanation.
Well, let's ask Laurie. Where would the smallest possibility of a creator be? I think he said the origin of the universe. Maybe is that?
Oh yeah, I'd like to get into that too.
Is that possible, Laurie?
Say that again. With the origins of the universe, is that?
You said the origin of the universe. There could be a creator behind. What was it? Time, space, and matter.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where else to put it. I mean, science has explained so much of the natural world, and I'm sorry, I have complete confidence in the science that we've produced so far when it comes to how this planet formed, how the universe operates out there. I mean, all that stuff. It's not all, you know, certain. Of course, we may make some discoveries and things may change, but you know, I have confidence in the science and, you know, all the geology that has been done. I know you talk. There's some contradictions you're talking about with the geology. I mean, I don't know. I can't explain any of that really, but I'm confident with the science that we've done.
Okay.
So,
Can I talk? Can I talk to you about the Big Bang for a little while?
yeah, go ahead.
Apparently, it was a tiny little dot, a speck called a singularity. Okay, let's accept that, right? Apparently, at the initial stages, this little singularity, when it decided to explode or expand or inflate, in order for science to solve the contradiction of the cosmic microwave background radiation, they have proposed an initial inflation that had that initial dot expand or inflate 10 to the power 26 times its original size in 10 to the minus 35 seconds. If I'm an engineer, I've done the calculations here. That equates to 33 times 10 to the 51st power faster than the speed of light. Now, I've questioned. I'm not sure if you've heard of Leo Phileas, but I asked him, how can that occur when nothing can actually travel faster than the speed of light? This is what science has actually proved.
That's not true.
But sorry, no, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You finish. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if this inflation occurred that quickly, what made it slow down? And his answer was infiltron. And I said, what's an infiltron? He said, that's the hypothesis where all the four fundamental forces in the universe were once one thing, one force. That is science fiction, Laurie. That's science fiction. There's no evidence to suggest that occurred. So, see, they're appealing to science fiction to prove the universe from nothing.
Well, that whole thing of the speed of light that you're talking about. Now, scientists are observing the universe expanding faster than the speed of light right now. So, you know.
Yeah. Yes, that's the universe. But we're
talking about matter or certain things that, you know, I'm not a physicist, so I don't know if I can do justice with this. But you know,
but Laurie, in that initial inflation, you had energy and matter. Energy and matter can't travel at the speed of light.
No. The thing of it is it's my understanding. Matter was created later. I think that's where you're getting a little mixed up. You got to do a little more studying on the beginnings of the universe. I mean, all you had was you know, hydrogen and helium and lithium, I believe, is what, you know, it was a ball of light. It was not matter the way you see matter today. So you know, you got to look into that a little deeper before you.
Well, Laurie,
Yep.
those things are physical, and you're telling me that those physical things traveled 33 times 10 to the 5th power faster than the speed of light.
Like I said, you know, that's my best understanding. You'd have to have a physicist to explain it to you a little better than me, because certainly I you know, I'm not a physicist, but it's my understanding. It wasn't matter at the very beginning, like not the way you see it today. All of that stuff was created later as the universe evolved. That's the thing.
What was the singularity?
Well, there you go. I don't think the scientists have the complete answer to that. As far as my understanding is that was, you know, hydrogen, helium, and lithium. You know, scientists, when it gets down to all the way down to that singularity, you know,
that's
all our calculations, you know, go away. They don't work. So, at that point, they don't know. They don't have the answers to that. So you can't just say, oh, it can't do it, because it can, because it did. Yeah, I mean, you see it. Maybe, maybe we have it wrong. I'm not saying, and science will probably say the same thing I'm saying. Maybe we do have it wrong. But, I'd be pretty hard pressed to go against any physicists in this on this planet, because they're pretty smart people. And I think they certainly could explain it to you really, really well.
Well, I'll be talking to one on the 17th, and he's a Christian, so if you want to listen in.
There you go. That could be a really interesting thing. That would, could give us some answers of what we're talking about right here. Like I said, I have a decent understanding of it, but not.
So what would you say? What would you say is most plausible before that point? Would you invoke a multiverse?
Actually, yes. I think that's a strong possibility. I think nothingness. I think nothingness is incoherent. I think that there was always something, and what that is, we don't know.
So
that's
some sort of
real hard question. That's a tough one.
Right. So some sort of universe generating mechanism, something.
Yeah, I think we may have some answers to that kind of stuff, especially now, because they're doing a lot of stuff with the gravitational waves now. So that, which they're really looking into the cosmic microwave background, the radiation background. So that, I think that has a lot of information in it that they're trying to really research, and the gravitational waves is a part of that. So they may get some pretty good answers out of that. And, there may possibly be evidence there for, other multiverses. And there's different types. Don't forget, there's different types of multiverses. You get the Alan Guth one there. And then what's the other? And then there's a few, the string theory type multiverse. And so, those are questions that are just scientists are trying to answer,
Oh, but you have an infinite regress problem. That can't go on forever.
Well, I don't know. I mean, scientists will disagree with it. I mean, that, you got, what about Roger Penrose? And he calls that circulate type universe, where the universe keeps creating itself over and over again. That's I guess you call that an infinite regress. I don't know. I'm not all that familiar with that. But, a physicist, like you said, that maybe those kind of questions will come up with that discussion on Smokey's channel. That'll be, like I said, that'll be very interesting.
Yeah, that'll be on the 17th. There is a good video with Penrose. He's actually neutral on it. He doesn't actually see that as a satisfying answer. I think he says something very similar to that. Also, M theory as well.
Right.
So
I looked into that a little bit.
Yeah, he's got a few videos on that, and he's not satisfied with any of that.
Yeah. Did you hear him talking? That was. Did you see the thing that he did with Dr.
Hawking?
With Craig?
Yeah.
That wasn't too long ago, right? I watched that. That was good. That was an interesting one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, this unanswered questions, and I don't have them all. That's for sure, and none of us do.
Laurie, could the possibility be God did it?
Back at the beginning of our universe, that would be, in my opinion, the only place that you could put God. But then to me, okay, I'll explain it to you. The way I look at it is, if you put your God there, let's say, for the sake of argument, God started the universe with the Big Bang, and that's it. And to me, I think God, if that actually happened, he stepped aside and has nothing to do with us or reality, or doesn't, manifest itself in our world at all. So what's the difference? To me, it doesn't matter. I mean, that's the only place, and that's my opinion anyway.
If you guys had all the answers, you wouldn't be having this conversation.
Well, the pure impossibility of nothing creating everything from nothing is just not science, and that's what the singularity is talking about. because the singularity apparently. Sorry.
Well, that's not what the science says. It's not saying it came from nothing. I mean, the Big Bang does not say that. So that's what I mean.
Okay, what was it? What was it?
Sorry, we just talked about all that. I mean, science can go all the way back to the Big Bang. We see the cosmic microwave background. We know that event happened. Okay, so it goes right back to a ball of light. Okay, I've listened to many physicists do lectures on this kind of stuff, and they're all slightly, some of them are slightly different, but they're all, and generally they're all the same. They all believe that the Big Bang happened. There's no question about that, and it was a ball of light. That's how some physicists describe it. It was, hydrogen and helium.
Well, how do you get things without time? How do you get things without time? Where did time come from? How do you get dynamics without time?
Well, now you're going back to, we don't have the answers to that. Now we're talking about our local universe began at that time. Okay, that's our time began there. So we don't know what's before that.
It would be this. It would be another Big Bang.
There still could be more time in other multiverses. Okay, another universe somehow created our universe, and another, and that's the infinite regress. Right. I don't, like I said, I don't have the answers to that.
Well, then there'd have to be some sort of mother of all universes that was always there, or a creator, which you don't want.
There you go. I mean, there you go. But then that would just push God back even further if we can prove that there's actually other universes.
Well, it wouldn't push a creator back because that would always be there.
Oh yeah, or put it right at the Big Bang. Yep. I guess you could still leave it there, and that's what I mean. That's
I'm after truth too.
In my thinking, I've been an atheist my entire life. I'm sorry to say that, guys, but and that's just the way I think. And that's the only place I can put God. I just, to me, I don't believe in the God in the Bible. That's for sure. I just, the stories are just too crazy, and it's the contradictions and the morality stuff and all that. I just, there is just no way that I could be a Christian. That's for sure, because I don't agree with any of it.
Have you ever looked into the contradictions, Laurie?
I mean, I've heard many debates and lots of people talking about them. What do you mean by looking into them?
Well, there are many books that go through every single one of those contradictions and explain them logically, and there are no contradictions. I've got 2 books on the subject.
Actually, yeah, as a matter of fact, I haven't listened to, who's very interesting and I like a lot is Dr. Josh. He's an interesting character who has, the PhD, and I'm sure you guys don't like him because he's on the other camp, but I know I've listened to him a little bit. I haven't listened to him a ton, but I think he's talked a lot about it, and there's probably
Are you referring to Swami Das?
Yeah, I figured I probably shouldn't have brought him up, huh? Apparently.
Well, he believes in God.
No, Dr. Josh. He's on Skylar Fiction show there.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about Dr. Josh Swamidas.
No, Dr. Josh. What's Dr. Josh's Digital Hammurabi? Is that his name? He's an.
No, I don't know him. I'm sorry.
He's a biblical scholar. I mean, he's got a PhD, and he's studied Hebrew. He can read the Sumerian texts, and so I've listened to a lot of stuff that he said, and I mean, like I said, I've never done any Bible studies, or I've never really studied the Bible just per se, because I've grown up in a secular area, in a secular household.
Laurie, excuse me for bringing this up, but I heard you earlier, and that's why I joined. I heard you say you were open-minded, yet all you've said is you've listened to someone. have you ever done your own research?
Yeah, I mean, have I read the Bible? No, I just.
So that's called
I
an
don't-
argument from ignorance then.
Maybe it is. I can't say that I have all the answers, and that's certainly one of the reasons why there's been a lot of things that you guys have said that I can't disagree with. You know, there's many things. There's many things that are unknown.
From my point of view, I don't try and comment on something that I don't know of. And if I comment on a book I haven't read, then I'm being dishonest. So I suggest, as a first trial, pick up the Bible and read it. I'm into my second reading at the moment, and I try and read at least 7 chapters every week.
Yeah.
You can easily read the Bible without taking too much time from your own, social timetable. You can easily read the entire Bible in a year.
Yeah. I mean, I've read the Bible some. I certainly haven't read it cover to cover. I mean, I've read some of it, but like I said, I get my information from your side, all your arguments, and listen to a lot of the Bible stuff. And I listen to the atheist side also.
But then you choose to believe the atheists.
Well, but you're saying I choose, and I'm not really too sure about that. I don't think you really choose. I think I really don't think I chose not to believe in God. I really don't think I did. I mean, shit, I'd love to there be a God out there. I'm sure everybody would.
I would love for there not to be a God, so I could do whatever the hell I want.
Now you're talking morality there, right?
Well, sure. But back to the origin. Yeah, back to the origin of life. That's what changed my mind, was the origin of genetic code, what we were talking about earlier. And I think that's something maybe you should just study a little bit more. Watch some of those videos, man, especially with James Tour.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I've listened to a little bit of, or watched some stuff on him. Not a lot, I do have to say. I was actually, he had him.
I got to talk with him.
Angelo had him on earlier, a little while ago, right?
Yeah, I talked with him.
Yeah, and like I said, I've listened to a little bit of his stuff before, prior to today, obviously, but not a lot. I do have to say, not a lot of his stuff. But I've listened to both camps. I've listened to a lot of the guys that you've talked about.
Yeah.
I'm not just listening to the atheist side. I've listened to everybody, and I love listening to the debates. Although the debates, those don't really. You're better off listening to the lectures or the discussions, interviews, discussions, and things like that, or lectures. You definitely get way more information out of something like that. A debate, not really.
But then you need to verify that information for yourself as well. I do exactly the same thing, Laurie, but I don't leave it there, because when you listen to a debate, for example, you hear 2 points of view. I can choose to believe one or the other, but if I go and verify what they're saying, then I'm making my own decision.
Right. And there's the hard part, like you said. I mean, you should go and verify everything, but you just can't. I just can't do that. I wouldn't have the time to, maybe I could watch one lecture or one discussion and then say, hey, I'd like to go check in on, what they're actually saying. Yeah, you could do that some, but you can't do it all. That's for sure. There's just too much.
Well, I'm retired, Laurie, so I've got plenty of time on my hands, and that's what I do. That's what I do all day. I read news. I read science. I read science papers. I read books. I watch debates.
Like I said,
I watch documentaries.
I applaud you guys for the education that you guys do. I applaud you guys for that. I would never ever take that away from you, because there's no question a lot of you guys are well studied on subjects, but what I do know is most of you guys, everybody seems to have their little niche, but which is completely understandable because you can't study it all. There's just too much. So I think that's just natural. Everybody picks.
Oh no! You're wrong, Laurie. I'm an engineer, and we know everything.
Yeah. I wish I did.
Lori, would there be anything in the origin of life field that would change your mind if I showed you an experiment that was perhaps highly manipulated? Would you say that that's the work of natural processes or the intelligent chemist?
If you showed me an experiment that was highly manipulated, well, it would have to be, right? So I'm not
Well,
sure.
I'm saying, but you would
do.
Well, no, you would conclude that it was a natural environment or it was something that was contrived.
Well, no, I wouldn't because it was manipulated. I'm not sure how that.
Well, that's my main point with a lot of these experiments that they're very highly flawed.
I don't disagree with you. No, like I said, I don't disagree with you. But we just don't have the answers. I'm sorry to say. And like you said, you could show me something that's highly manipulated, and it has to be because that's the only way we can do it, and that's the only way we can do experiments. And so I don't.
We can set up. They do set up natural environments and they fail. I don't know if you know the famous Miller. Famous Miller experiment in the 50s. I'm sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a natural environment, and all they got was a bunch of useless amino acids. They couldn't even produce a protein. You know what I mean?
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, Tony, our disagreements and our battle right here may never get solved in our lifetime. Right? I mean, that's a possibility. This could go on and on and on, and if we can't figure that out.
Laurie, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you very much for a cordial discussion, but I have to. It's time for me to take my dog for a walk, so nothing against you.
Me too.
Look, all we're trying to do, Laurie, is to show you the truth.
Yeah.
And
this was great.
You be the judge of that, and I'll pray for you, mate. I really mean that.
Thank you so much. This was very nice. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you, guys.
All right.
God
bless.
bless you.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
someone out with us, and just a kind of bit on what people could expect to find at your link below.
Well, I've been a full-time secular activist advocating for science education and advocating for secular policies and politics for a better part of, well, I've been doing it for more than 10 years, and I've been doing it full-time since at least 2014. However, I am not rich, and I need all the help I can get. So patreon.com/ARONRA, please.
You bet. And Tom Jump, glad to have you here once again, friend of the channel as well. If you could let people know what they can expect to find at your links, the floor is all yours. Thanks for being here.
I'm T-Jump. I do debates with professors and philosophers from different colleges
Cliff is a
around
great
the
guy.
world about different topics related to philosophy and the existence of God. I'm also not rich. I appreciate money too. Money is good. So check out my YouTube channel, youtube.com/tjump.
You bet. Thanks so much, Tom. And Cliff, thrilled to have you. I think it was like years ago when I had first discovered one of your videos on YouTube, these live interactions in public, really fun. So Cliff, if you want to let the audience know, we're thrilled to have you back. If you could let people know just what they could expect to find at your link as well.
Give me an answer. You can find people who are really concerned about truth. What does the evidence point to as being true? And I certainly don't know all the truth. I'm a searcher. I'm someone who's growing and understanding truth better. And I love talking with people who are in a similar quest.
You bet. Thanks so much, Cliff. And Stuart, thrilled to have you back as well. Just had that one-on-one the other day. So we're glad to have you. And as well as what people, just a basic introduction on yourself as well as what, in terms of what people can expect to find at your link. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, the YouTube channel is Give Me an Answer or Ask Cliff. And so you can check us out there. It's a international television program that you've been running for almost 40 years. So it's on college campuses across the country. There's going to be a little bit of a dent into things, obviously, this fall. Debating with masks on is going to be interesting. But we're thankful for your channel here, James. This is a great medium to do it on. And yeah, that's the link.
Thanks so much. That means a lot. Appreciate it. And with that, folks, we're going to jump right into this. So Tom would like to get the ball rolling. Tom will be making a short statement, just kind of explaining where his side comes from. Then we'll hear from Cliff and Stuart as well for their quick opening, just in terms of where they stand. And then we'll jump right into that open dialogue. If you have a question, feel free to fire it into the old live chat. And we ask that you do us a favor. If you tag me with that Modern Day Debate, it makes it easier for me to see those questions. And if you can reserve your questions for serious questions related to the topic, that helps a lot as well. So with that, Tom,